Hello, horror lovers. Welcome to our channel, where chilling tales meet the comfort of your bed. If you enjoy that spine-chilling sensation before sleep, you're in the right place. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts. Your support helps us keep bringing you the best horror stories. Now turn off the lights, lie down, and prepare for a night of nightmares. I'll never forget that rainy afternoon in Seattle, when my life changed forever. The day had started like any other, dull, gray, and utterly ordinary. I was walking home from school, my shoes squelching on the wet sidewalk, when it happened. A car horn blared, startlingly close. I turned to see a blue sedan skidding on the slick road, heading straight for a little boy who had wandered into the street. Time seemed to slow as I watched in horror, knowing I was too far away to help. "Look out!" I screamed, my hand outstretched in a futile gesture. And then, nothing. The world around me froze. The car hung suspended in midair, its tires no longer touching the ground. Raindrops hung motionless like tiny glass beads. The little boy's eyes were wide with terror, his small body caught in mid-stride. I blinked, certain I was hallucinating. But the eerie stillness remained. Cautiously, I approached the scene, my footsteps echoing unnaturally in the silence. I waved my hand in front of the boy's face. No response. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding flat and strange in the motionless air. "Can anyone hear me?" Only silence answered. Heart pounding, I gently guided the frozen boy back onto the sidewalk, out of the car's path. As I did, I noticed my own hands looked slightly blurred, as if they weren't quite solid. A chill ran down my spine. "Okay, Emma," I muttered to myself. "Time to wake up now." But I didn't wake up. Instead, I found myself walking among the frozen tableau, examining the suspended raindrops and the expressions frozen on people's faces. It was beautiful in a way, but deeply unsettling. As I explored, a nagging feeling grew in the pit of my stomach. How had this happened? And more importantly, how could I make it stop? I closed my eyes, trying to focus on the flow of time, willing it to resume. Nothing changed. Panic began to set in. Come on, I pleaded, clenching my fists. "Move!" Suddenly, like a rubber band snapping, the world lurched back into motion. The car's tires screeched as the driver swerved, narrowly missing the boy who was now safely on the sidewalk. People gasped and murmured in confusion. I stood there, shaking, as the reality of what had just happened washed over me. Somehow, impossibly, I had stopped time. "Are you okay, miss?" A concerned voice broke through my daze. An elderly woman was peering at me, her brow furrowed with worry. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile, trying to steady my voice. "I'm fine, thank you. Just startled by the near accident." As I hurried home, my mind raced with questions. Was it real? Could I do it again? Part of me wanted to try immediately, but a deeper instinct warned me to wait until I was alone. I burst through my front door, calling out, "Mom? Dad? Is anyone home?" Silence. A note on the fridge caught my eye. "Working late. Leftovers in the fridge. Love, Mom." Perfect. I had the house to myself to experiment. In my room, I stood in front of my mirror, staring at my reflection. I looked the same. Brown hair, green eyes, a spattering of freckles across my nose. But I felt fundamentally changed. "Okay, Emma," I said to my reflection. "Let's see if you've gone crazy, or if you really can stop time." I closed my eyes, concentrating on that feeling I'd had earlier. A sort of mental push against the flow of time. For a moment, nothing happened, then I felt it. A subtle shift, like the world holding its breath. I opened my eyes. My alarm clock had stopped, its digital numbers frozen. Outside my window, a bird hung suspended in flight. A hysterical laugh bubbled up from my throat. "Holy shit," I whispered. "It's real." For the next hour, I experimented with starting and stopping time, marveling at my newfound ability. I rearranged objects in my room, played tricks on my cat, and even started reading the diary my sister kept hidden under her mattress. As exhilarating as it was, a nagging unease grew with each use of my power. It felt unnatural, like I was breaking some fundamental law of the universe. And there was something else, a faint, cold presence I sensed at the edges of my awareness whenever time was stopped, as if something was watching me from just beyond the veil of reality. Finally, mentally exhausted, I let time resume its normal flow and collapsed onto my bed. My mind whirled with possibilities. With this power, I could do anything: ace tests, become a hero, maybe even get rich. But as I drifted off to sleep, a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had set something in motion, something dark and irreversible. In that moment, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered a warning. Be careful what you wish for. If only I had listened to that voice. If only I had known the horror that was about to unfold, the terrible price of playing with forces beyond my understanding. But in that moment, all I felt was the intoxicating thrill of power and the naive belief that I could control it. How wrong I was. Seattle's perpetual drizzle cloaked the city in a gray haze as I trudged home from school that fateful afternoon. The monotonous patter of rain against my umbrella matched the dull rhythm of my footsteps on the slick sidewalk. Little did I know that in mere moments, my ordinary world would shatter like glass. Emma, wait up! I turned to see my best friend Lily jogging towards me, her backpack bouncing awkwardly. Hey, Lil, thought you had band practice? She rolled her eyes dramatically. Cancelled. Mr. Hendricks got food poisoning or something. Want to hit Java Jolt for some coffee? I hesitated, eyeing the darkening sky. I don't know. I should probably get home and start on that history paper. Come on, Em, live a little. Lily's grin was infectious, and I felt my resolve weakening. Fine, I conceded with a laugh. But just one coffee. I really do need to. My words died in my throat as a piercing screech of tires cut through the air. Time seemed to slow as I turned towards the sound. A red pickup truck was fishtailing on the wet road, bearing down on a little girl who had wandered into the crosswalk. No! I screamed, my hand shooting out instinctively as if I could somehow stop the truck with sheer willpower. And then, silence. The world around me froze like a paused video. The truck hung suspended in midair, a spray of water arcing from its tires. The little girl's face was a mask of terror, frozen in a silent scream. Raindrops hung motionless around me like tiny, glistening beads. I blinked hard, certain I was hallucinating. But the eerie stillness remained. Lily? I whispered, turning to where my friend had been standing. She was there, but utterly still, her mouth open mid-sentence, eyes wide with shock. What the hell is happening? I muttered, my voice sounding flat and strange in the motionless air. Heart pounding, I approached the frozen tableau in the street. I waved my hand in front of the little girl's face. No response. Gingerly, I touched her shoulder. Her body was solid, but I could move her. Taking a deep breath, I gently guided her back onto the sidewalk, out of the truck's path. As I did, I noticed my own hands looked slightly blurred, as if they weren't quite real. A chill ran down my spine. Okay, Emma, I said aloud, trying to calm myself. You've obviously lost your mind. Time to wake up now. But I didn't wake up. Instead, I found myself walking among the frozen scene, examining the suspended raindrops and the expressions etched on people's faces. It was beautiful in a way, but deeply, profoundly wrong. As I explored, a nagging feeling grew in the pit of my stomach. How had this happened? And more importantly, how could I make it stop? I closed my eyes, concentrating on the flow of time, willing it to resume. Nothing changed. Panic began to set in. Come on, I pleaded, clenching my fists. Move. Suddenly, like a rubber band snapping, the world lurched back into motion. The truck's tires screeched as the driver swerved, narrowly missing the now empty crosswalk. People gasped and murmured in confusion. "Oh my God, Emma!" Lily's voice cut through the chaos. "Did you see that? That little girl? She was right there in the street and then, I don't understand. How did she get back on the sidewalk so fast?" I stood there, shaking, as the reality of what had just happened washed over me. Somehow, impossibly, I had stopped time. "Emma? Hello? Earth to Emma?" Lily was waving her hand in front of my face. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile, trying to steady my voice. "I'm fine, just shaken up by what almost happened. Listen, Lil, I'm not feeling great. I think I'm going to head home after all." Lily's brow furrowed with concern. I experimented with starting and stopping time, marveling at my newfound ability. I rearranged objects in my room, played tricks on my cat, and even started reading the diary my sister kept hidden under her mattress. As exhilarating as it was, a nagging unease grew with each use of my power. It felt unnatural, like I was breaking some fundamental law of the universe. And there was something else. A faint, cold presence I sensed at the edges of my awareness whenever time was stopped, as if something was watching me from just beyond the veil of reality. Finally, mentally exhausted, I let time resume its normal flow and collapsed onto my bed. My mind whirled with possibilities. With this power, I could do anything. Ace tests, become a hero, maybe even get rich. But as I drifted off to sleep, a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had set something in motion, something dark and irreversible. In that moment, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered a warning. Be careful what you wish for. If only I had listened to that voice. If only I had known the horror that was about to unfold, the terrible price of playing with forces beyond my understanding. But in that moment, all I felt was the intoxicating thrill of power and the naive belief that I could control it. The days following my discovery were a whirlwind of exhilaration and secret experiments. I felt like a superhero, drunk on the possibilities my newfound power offered. Every moment alone became an opportunity to push the boundaries of what I could do. My alarm blared at 6:30 a.m. as usual. I groaned, reaching for the snooze button, when a mischievous thought struck me. With a grin, I focused, feeling that now familiar mental push. The alarm's drone cut off abruptly as time froze. "Good morning, Emma," I muttered to myself, stretching luxuriously in the silence. "Looks like you've got all the time in the world." I got ready at a leisurely pace, reveling in the knowledge that the rest of the world was on pause. When I finally let time resume, only 5 minutes had passed on my clock. Perfect. At breakfast, Mom eyed me suspiciously. "You're chipper this morning. Usually I have to drag you out of bed." I shrugged, fighting to keep a straight face. Just slept well, I guess. As I headed out the door, Dad called after me. "Don't forget big history test today." I froze, panic rising in my throat. The test. I'd completely forgotten to study. "Right," I called back weakly. "Thanks, Dad." As soon as I was out of sight, I ducked behind a hedge and stopped time again. Pulling out my history textbook, I began to read, occasionally letting time flow just enough to check my watch. By the time I reached school, I'd crammed in several hours of study. In class, Mr. Peterson handed out the tests with his usual dour expression. "You have 1 hour. Begin." I waited until he'd returned to his desk, then stopped time once more. The silence was eerie, pens frozen mid-stroke, my classmates' faces locked in expressions of concentration or despair. Pushing down a twinge of guilt, I stood and walked to Mr. Peterson's desk, carefully lifting the answer key he'd left face down. "Sorry, Mr. P," I whispered, "but I've got to ace this one." With the answers memorized, I returned to my seat and let time resume. The test was a breeze, and I finished with time to spare, making sure to get a few answers wrong to avoid suspicion. As the bell rang, my best friend Lily bounded up to me. Oh my God, Emma. That test was brutal. How do you think you did? I feigned nonchalance. Not too bad, I think. You? Lily groaned dramatically. Pretty sure I bombed it. Hey, want to hit the mall after school? I need some retail therapy after that nightmare. Sure, I agreed, already plotting how I could use my power to snag some discounts. The rest of the day passed in a blur of small thrills and petty uses of my ability. I peeked at the answers for a pop quiz in math, rearranged the cafeteria so I could sit next to my crush, and even managed to avoid an awkward encounter with my ex by freezing time and ducking into a classroom. At the mall with Lily, I hit the jackpot. As we browsed a trendy boutique, I spotted a gorgeous dress I'd been eyeing for weeks. The price tag made me wince. Ugh, why is everything so expensive? Lily complained, echoing my thoughts. Yeah, it's ridiculous, I agreed, an idea forming. Hey, I'm going to run to the bathroom real quick, be right back. Instead, I slipped into a quiet corner and stopped time. Heart pounding with a mix of excitement and guilt, I made my way to the register. The cashier stood frozen, hand outstretched to a customer. I carefully opened the drawer, extracted enough cash to cover the dress, and placed it under the register. Consider it a down payment, I murmured, trying to justify the theft to myself. Returning to Lily, I casually suggested we check the clearance rack. To my surprise, the dress was there, marked down to a price that matched the cash I'd planted. No way, Lily exclaimed. Emma, that's the dress you've been drooling over forever. It must be fate, you have to get it. I made a show of hesitating before agreeing. As the cashier rang up my purchase, I held my breath, half expecting to be caught. But everything went smoothly and we left the store without incident. That night, as I admired my new dress in the mirror, a mixture of emotions swirled through me. The thrill of getting away with it warred with a nagging sense of guilt, but I pushed the guilt aside, focusing instead on the rush of power I felt. You've got a gift, Emma, I told my reflection. Why not enjoy it? Little did I know, each use of my power was like a beacon, drawing the attention of something dark and hungry. The presence I'd sensed that first day grew stronger, lurking just at the edges of my awareness whenever I stopped time. As I fell asleep that night, dress hanging proudly in my closet, I had no idea of the terrible price I would soon pay for these small indulgences. The exhilaration of those early days would soon turn to ashes in my mouth, as the true nature of my gift revealed itself in the most horrifying way possible. But for now, I slept the sleep of the blissfully ignorant, dreaming of all the ways I could use my power to shape the world to my liking. If only I had known the nightmare that was about to unfold, perhaps I would have made different choices. But the allure of power is a seductive thing, and I was drunk on the possibilities. The clock ticked steadily on my nightstand, counting down the moments until my world would shatter. And somewhere in the darkness, something ancient and malevolent stirred, awakened by my careless meddling with the fabric of time itself. The day Jessica died started like any other. I woke up late, as usual, and used my power to give myself extra time to get ready. It had become a routine, this casual manipulation of time. I never imagined it would lead to such devastating consequences. As I rushed into homeroom, I saw Jessica in her usual seat, her blonde hair catching the sunlight streaming through the windows. She waved me over, grinning. Emma, you're actually on time for once. Did hell freeze over? I laughed, sliding into the seat next to her. Very funny. I've been working on my punctuality. If only she knew how I'd really managed it. But that was my little secret. Hey, Jessica whispered as our teacher started taking attendance. Are we still on for study group this afternoon? I nodded, already planning how I could use my power to peek at the answer key for our upcoming test. Wouldn't miss it. The day dragged on, a blur of classes and conversations. By the time the final bell rang, I was itching to use my power again. As Jessica and I walked to the library for our study session, an idea struck me. Hey Jess, I said casually, I forgot something in my locker. Why don't you go on ahead and I'll catch up? She shrugged. Sure, no problem. Don't take too long, though. You know how Mrs. Chen gets if we're late. As soon as Jessica turned the corner, I concentrated, feeling the familiar sensation of time grinding to a halt. The world froze around me, a tableau of suspended motion. I made my way to the library, slipping past frozen students and teachers. In the silent, motionless room, I found our study group's usual table. Mrs. Chen, the librarian, stood nearby, a stack of books in her arms. With a pang of guilt that I quickly suppressed, I rifled through Mrs. Chen's desk, finding the answer key for our upcoming test. I memorized as much as I could, knowing I'd have to be subtle about using the information. As I prepared to let time resume, a chill ran down my spine. That odd presence I sometimes felt when using my power seemed stronger than ever. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw a shadow move in the corner of my eye. Shaking off the eerie feeling, I made my way back to where I'd left Jessica. With a mental push, I released my hold on time. The world lurched back into motion. Sounds rushed back, a cacophony after the unnatural silence. I stumbled, momentarily disoriented. "Emma?" Jessica's voice came from around the corner. "You okay? You've been standing there for like 5 minutes." I blinked, surprised. Usually, no time passed in the real world when I used my power. Had something gone wrong? "Yeah, I'm fine," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just lost in thought, I guess." We made our way to the library, where the rest of our study group was already assembled. As we settled in, I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Halfway through our session, a commotion erupted near the front desk. Mrs. Chen had collapsed. "Someone call an ambulance," a panicked voice shouted. Everything after that was a blur. Paramedics arrived, but it was too late. Mrs. Chen was pronounced dead on the scene. "Heart attack," they said. As we were ushered out of the library, Jessica grabbed my arm, her face pale. "Emma, did you see?" Right before she collapsed, Mrs. Chen was looking right at us, and her eyes, they looked so scared. A cold dread settled in the pit of my stomach. "I'm sure it was nothing," I said, but the words felt hollow. That night I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mrs. Chen's face frozen in that moment of terror. Had she somehow sensed what I'd done? Was it just a coincidence? The next few days were a haze of grief and confusion. The school was in mourning, and whispered theories about Mrs. Chen's death circulated through the hallways. It was a week later when the second blow fell. I was sitting in homeroom when our principal entered, his face grave. "I'm afraid I have some terrible news," he began, his voice heavy. "Jessica Williams passed away last night in her sleep." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Jessica, my Jessica? It couldn't be true, but it was. Apparently, she'd gone to bed with a headache and never woken up. The doctors were baffled, throwing around terms like unexplained neurological event. As my classmates broke down around me, a horrible suspicion began to form in my mind. 2 deaths, both sudden and unexplained, both people who had been near me when I used my power. That night, alone in my room, I finally allowed myself to break down. "It's not possible," I sobbed into my pillow. "It can't be because of me. It can't be." But deep down, a voice whispered that it was. Somehow my meddling with time had cost 2 people their lives. As I lay there, tears soaking my pillow, I felt that presence again. Stronger now, almost tangible. A cold, hungry thing that seemed to delight in my pain. "What are you?" I whispered into the darkness. "What have I done?" Only silence answered, but I could have sworn I heard the faintest whisper of laughter, cruel and ancient. In that moment, I knew with chilling certainty that my power was far more sinister than I had ever imagined. What I had thought was a gift was really a curse, and I was only beginning to understand the horrifying price of playing with forces beyond my control. As dawn broke, I made a vow. I would never use my power again. Never again would I risk someone's life for my own selfish gains. But even as I made that promise, A part of me knew it was already too late. I had set something in motion, something dark and hungry, and it wasn't finished with me yet. The true horror was only beginning. The weeks following Jessica's funeral were a blur of grief and gnawing fear. I'd kept my promise not to use my power, but the suspicion that I was somehow responsible for the deaths around me grew with each passing day. Every unexpected noise made me jump. Every shadow seemed to hide that lurking presence I'd sensed before. One dreary afternoon, I was sitting alone in the school cafeteria, pushing food around my plate, when my friend Mike dropped into the seat across from me. "Earth to Emma," he said, waving a hand in front of my face. "You in there?" I blinked, forcing a smile. "Yeah, sorry, just thinking." Mike's face softened. "About Jess?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. If only he knew the whole truth. "Listen," Mike said, leaning in. "Some of us are worried about you. You've been different since it happened. More than just grief, you know?" I felt a flicker of panic. Had they noticed something? Did they suspect? "I'm fine," I said, perhaps too quickly. "Really, it's just been hard, that's all." Mike looked unconvinced. "Emma, you know you can talk to me, right? About anything." For a moment I was tempted to spill everything. The words were on the tip of my tongue. "Mike, I can stop time, and I think I killed Jessica and Mrs. Chen." But I swallowed them back, forcing another smile. "I know. Thanks, Mike. I just need some time." As Mike walked away, I overheard a snippet of conversation from a nearby table. "Third one this month, it's weird, right?" I froze, straining to hear more. "I'm telling you, something freaky is going on. People don't just drop dead for no reason." My heart pounding, I gathered my things and fled the cafeteria. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Third one this month? There had been another death? That evening, I scoured local news sites, my suspicions growing with each article I read. There it was, a local business owner, found dead in his office. Cause of death? Unknown. I racked my brain, trying to remember if I'd been near his shop recently. Had I unknowingly used my power around him? The possibilities made me sick. As I closed my laptop, my mom knocked on my door. "Emma, can I come in?" "Sure," I called, hastily wiping my eyes. Mom sat on the edge of my bed, her face concerned. "Honey, I got a call from your school counselor today. She's worried about you. Says you've been distracted in class, not turning in assignments." I felt a flash of irritation. "I'm fine, Mom. I'm just still processing everything." She reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "I know it's been hard, losing Jessica, but she wouldn't want you to shut down like this. Maybe it would help to talk to someone, a professional." The idea of trying to explain my situation to a therapist was almost laughable. What would I say? I think I'm inadvertently killing people with my time-stopping powers. "I'll think about it," I lied. That night I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jessica's face, Mrs. Chen collapsing, imagined the business owner's final moments. Were they all connected? Was I really responsible? In the early hours of the morning, I finally drifted off, only to be plunged into a vivid nightmare. I was in a dark room, surrounded by clocks, their ticking deafeningly loud. Suddenly, they all stopped at once, and I heard a voice cold and ancient. "Did you think you could play with time without consequences, little one?" I jolted awake, drenched in sweat, the voice still echoing in my mind. As I tried to calm my racing heart, a terrifying thought struck me. What if it wasn't just a dream? The next day at school, I was a bundle of nerves. Every glance, every whispered conversation seemed to be about me. During history class, I caught my teacher, Mr. Reeves, watching me with a strange expression. As the bell rang, he called out, "Emma, could you stay behind for a moment?" Reluctantly, I approached his desk. "Yes, Mr. Reeves?" He studied me for a long moment before speaking. "Emma, I couldn't help but notice you've seemed troubled lately. More than just grief over your friend? Is there something going on that you'd like to talk about? For a wild moment, I considered telling him everything, but the words stuck in my throat. No, sir, I'm just having a hard time focusing lately. Mr. Reeves nodded slowly. I see. Well, if you ever need to talk, my door is always open. As I turned to leave, he added, Oh, and Emma, be careful. Sometimes the world is more complicated than we realize. I froze, my hand on the doorknob. Did he know something? Was he trying to warn me? But when I looked back, Mr. Reeves was focused on his papers, as if he hadn't said anything unusual at all. That afternoon, as I walked home, the weight of my suspicions felt crushing. The mounting evidence, the strange dreams, Mr. Reeves's cryptic warning, it all pointed to a terrifying conclusion. My power wasn't just a cool ability. It was something dark, something dangerous. And somehow people were dying because of it. As I reached my front door, a chill ran down my spine. I felt that presence again, stronger than ever. And this time, I was sure I heard a voice, cold and mocking. The game has only just begun, little timekeeper. I slammed the door behind me, heart pounding. The mounting suspicion had become a certainty. I was in way over my head, meddling with forces I couldn't begin to understand. And the consequences were far more deadly than I could have ever imagined. The question now was, what was I going to do about it? The realization that my power was connected to the deaths around me sparked a frantic quest for answers. I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out, not just for me, but for everyone close to me. With trembling hands, I opened my laptop and began my desperate search for information. Hours blurred into days as I scoured the internet for any mention of time manipulation, unexplained deaths, or ancient curses. Most of what I found was useless: conspiracy theories, New Age mumbo-jumbo, and badly written creepypastas. But occasionally I'd stumble upon something that made my blood run cold. On a dusty forum dedicated to the occult, I found a thread titled, The Price of Temporal Manipulation. My heart raced as I read, Those who meddle with the flow of time invite disaster. The universe demands balance. For every moment stolen, a life must be paid. I slammed my laptop shut, my mind reeling. It couldn't be true. It had to be someone's sick idea of a joke. But deep down, I knew it aligned too perfectly with my experiences to be a coincidence. As I sat there trying to process what I'd read, my mom knocked on my door. Emma, dinner's ready. I'm not hungry, I called back, wincing at how shaky my voice sounded. There was a pause, then the sound of my door opening. Mom stepped in, her face creased with concern. Honey, you've barely left your room in days. What's going on? I looked up at her, suddenly feeling very small and scared. How could I possibly explain what was happening? I'm just doing some research for a school project, I lied. Mom sat on the edge of my bed, her eyes searching my face. Emma, I'm worried about you. Ever since Jessica. She trailed off, then took a deep breath. I know you're grieving, but this isn't healthy. Maybe we should consider talking to someone. For a moment, I was tempted to break down and tell her everything, but the words stuck in my throat. How could I admit that I might be responsible for Jessica's death? For Mrs. Chen's? For who knew how many others? I'm fine, Mom, I said, forcing a smile. Really, I just need some time. She didn't look convinced, but she nodded slowly. All right. But promise me you'll come down for breakfast tomorrow. We miss seeing you. As soon as she left, I reopened my laptop, determined to find more answers. My search led me to a website dedicated to myths and legends from around the world. There, buried in an article about Norse mythology, I found a reference to a being called the Timekeeper. According to the legend, the Timekeeper was a malevolent entity that fed on the life force of those who dared to manipulate time. The more one used their power, the stronger the Timekeeper became, until it eventually claimed the time manipulator's soul. A chill ran down my spine as I read the description. It matched too closely with the presence I'd felt, the voice I'd heard in my dreams. Was this the price of my power? Had I unknowingly made a deal with this thing? The next morning, true to my promise, I dragged myself downstairs for breakfast. As I picked at my food, my dad peered at me over his newspaper. "You look like you haven't slept in days," he remarked. "Everything okay, kiddo?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. How could I tell them that I was terrified to sleep, afraid of what might be waiting for me in my dreams? "Listen," Dad said, setting down his paper. "Your mom and I have been talking. We think it might be good for you to get out of the house for a bit. Why don't you go to the library today? Get some fresh air, maybe do some studying." The library? Of course. Why hadn't I thought of that before? If anywhere had information about obscure myths and legends, it would be there. "That's actually a great idea," I said, managing a genuine smile for the first time in days. "I think I will." An hour later, I was ensconced in the dusty back shelves of the local library, surrounded by stacks of books on mythology, the occult, and theoretical physics. I pored over tome after tome, my desperation growing with each dead end. As I reached for yet another book, a voice behind me made me jump. Heavy reading for a Saturday morning. I whirled around to see an elderly man watching me with curious eyes. His name tag identified him as Harold, head librarian. Yeah, I stammered. "Just doing some research for a school project." Harold's eyes twinkled knowingly. "Must be quite the project. Norse mythology, quantum mechanics, and..." He peered at one of the book titles. "Ancient Mesopotamian death cults? Interesting combination." I felt my face flush. "I'm just exploring different angles." Harold hummed, clearly unconvinced. He was silent for a moment, then said, "You know, if you're looking for information on more esoteric subjects, you might want to check our special collections room." My heart leapt. Special collections? Harold nodded. "Follow me." He led me to a small, dimly lit room at the back of the library. The air was thick with the smell of old paper and leather. Harold unlocked a cabinet and pulled out a heavy, leather-bound volume. "This might be of interest to you," he said, placing it carefully on the table. "It's a compendium of temporal anomalies and folklore. Not the kind of thing we keep in general circulation, if you know what I mean." I stared at the book, my hands itching to open it. "Thank you," I breathed. Harold gave me a long look. "Just be careful, young lady. Sometimes knowledge comes at a price." With that cryptic warning, he left me alone with the book. For hours I lost myself in its pages, my excitement growing with each revelation. Here, finally, were answers, or at least pieces of the puzzle. The book spoke of individuals throughout history who had possessed the ability to manipulate time. Some were hailed as prophets or miracle workers. Others were feared as witches or demons. But all of them, without exception, met tragic ends. One passage in particular caught my eye. "The power to control time is not a gift, but a curse. It attracts the attention of entities beyond mortal comprehension. These beings, known by many names across cultures, feed on the temporal energy generated by the manipulation of time. The more one uses their power, the stronger these entities become until they are able to cross the veil between worlds and claim their prey." My hands shook as I read the words, remembering the presence I'd felt, the voice in my dreams. Was this what I was dealing with? Had I unknowingly invited some kind of temporal parasite into our world? As I continued reading, I found a section on protection against these entities. It spoke of rituals and talismans that could supposedly ward off their influence. I scribbled down notes frantically, desperate for any edge I could get. Lost in my research, I didn't notice how late it had gotten until Harold appeared at my elbow. "We're closing soon," he said gently. "Did you find what you were looking for?" I looked up at him, my mind reeling with everything I'd learned. I'm not sure. Maybe. Thank you for showing me this book. It's been incredibly helpful. Harold nodded slowly, his eyes searching my face. Emma, he said, and I started at the use of my name. I didn't remember telling him what it was. Be very careful. The path you're on, it's dangerous. More dangerous than you can imagine. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? How do you know my name? But Harold just shook his head. Just remember, every action has a consequence, and some powers are not meant for mortals to wield. Before I could press him further, he turned and walked away, leaving me alone with my swirling thoughts and growing dread. That night, armed with the information from the book, I attempted one of the protection rituals. I drew symbols on my bedroom floor with salt, lit candles at specific points, and chanted words in a language I didn't understand. As I completed the ritual, I felt something. A shift in the air, like a bubble popping. For a moment, I dared to hope that it had worked, that I was safe. But then I heard it. That cold, mocking laugh that had haunted my dreams. Did you really think it would be that easy, little timekeeper? I spun around, my heart pounding. There, in the corner of my room, I saw a shadow darker than the surrounding darkness. It seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. What are you? I whispered, my voice shaking. The shadow seemed to grow, filling more of the room. I am the price of your arrogance, it hissed. The consequence of your meddling with forces beyond your comprehension. I backed away, my back hitting the wall. I didn't know, I pleaded. I didn't mean to. Ignorance is no excuse, the voice interrupted. You played with time, and now time plays with you. For every moment you stole, a life must be paid. And when the balance is restored, the shadow seemed to grin, a flash of teeth in the darkness. I will come for you. With a gasp, I jolted awake, drenched in sweat. My room was normal. No trace of the shadow or the ritual remains. Had it all been a dream? But as I sat there trying to calm my racing heart, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On my desk, where I'd left my notes from the library book, was a single black feather. In that moment, I knew with chilling certainty that my desperate research had only scratched the surface of what I was dealing with. The entity, the timekeeper, or whatever it was real. And it was coming for me. As dawn broke, I made a decision. I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I needed help, someone to share this burden with. But who could I possibly trust with something like this? With trembling hands, I picked up my phone and dialed a number. Mr. Reeves, it's Emma. I think I'm in trouble. Can we talk? As I waited for his response, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was running out of time. The clock on my nightstand ticked steadily, each second bringing me closer to a reckoning I couldn't begin to understand. The desperate research had given me answers, but those answers had only led to more terrifying questions. And somewhere in the shadows, something ancient and hungry was waiting, ready to collect on a debt I never meant to incur. Sleep, once a refuge, had become my greatest torment. Each night, as I reluctantly surrendered to exhaustion, I found myself plunged into a realm of nightmares more vivid and terrifying than anything I had ever experienced. The line between dream and reality blurred, leaving me questioning my sanity with each passing day. It began the night after my desperate research session at the library. As I drifted off, the world around me seemed to shift and warp. I found myself standing in a vast, dimly lit chamber. The walls were lined with countless clocks, their ticking creating a deafening cacophony that seemed to penetrate my very soul. Welcome, little timekeeper, a voice echoed through the chamber, cold and ancient. We've been expecting you. I spun around, trying to locate the source of the voice, but the room seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. Who are you? I called out, my voice trembling. What is this place? A chilling laugh reverberated through the air. We are the guardians of time, the collectors of debts, and you, child, have accrued quite a debt. Suddenly, the clocks began to spin wildly, their hands whirling at impossible speeds. With each rotation, I saw flashes of familiar faces: Jessica, Mrs. Chen, the business owner whose death I'd read about. Their expressions were frozen in terror, eyes wide and accusing. "No," I whispered, backing away. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I didn't know." "Ignorance is no excuse," the voice hissed. "You played with forces beyond your comprehension. Now you must pay the price." I jolted awake, drenched in sweat, the echoes of the dream still ringing in my ears. As I tried to calm my racing heart, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The clock on my nightstand had stopped, its hands frozen at exactly 3:33. The dreams continued, each night more intense than the last. In one, I found myself in a graveyard, the tombstones bearing the names of everyone I knew. As I wandered through the rows, the dates of death on each stone kept changing, flickering between past, present, and future. "Emma?" a familiar voice called out. I turned to see Jessica standing among the graves, her skin pale and translucent. "Jess?" I choked out, tears welling in my eyes. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." Jessica's expression hardened, her eyes turning black. "Sorry doesn't bring us back, Emma. Sorry doesn't undo what you've done." I woke up screaming, my parents rushing into my room in a panic. "Emma, honey, what's wrong?" my mom asked, pulling me into a tight embrace. I clung to her, sobbing uncontrollably. "The dreams," I managed to choke out. "They won't stop. They feel so real." My dad sat on the edge of the bed, his face etched with concern. "Maybe it's time we talk to someone about this," he suggested gently. "A professional who can help you work through what you're experiencing." I shook my head violently. "No, you don't understand. No one can help me with this." My parents exchanged worried glances. "Emma," my mom said softly, "we're really concerned. You've been so distant lately, and now these nightmares. Please let us help you." I wanted so badly to tell them everything, to unburden myself of the terrible secret I'd been carrying. But how could I explain something I barely understood myself? How could I tell them that their daughter might be responsible for multiple deaths? "I'm okay," I lied, forcing a weak smile. "It was just a bad dream. I'll be fine." They didn't look convinced, but eventually left me alone after extracting a promise that I'd try to get some more sleep. But sleep was the last thing I wanted. As the nights wore on, the dreams became more elaborate, more sinister. In one particularly haunting sequence, I found myself back in the school library where Mrs. Chen had died. But this time, I was forced to watch the scene unfold in agonizing slow motion. Mrs. Chen approached me, her movements jerky and unnatural. "You did this to me," she accused, her voice distorted. "You stole my time." I tried to back away, but found myself rooted to the spot. "I'm sorry," I pleaded. "I didn't know what I was doing." Mrs. Chen's face began to age rapidly, her skin wrinkling and sagging before my eyes. "Every action has a consequence," she intoned, her voice growing weaker as her body deteriorated. "The balance must be restored." I watched in horror as she crumbled to dust before me, her final accusing gaze seared into my memory. The next day at school, I was a wreck. Dark circles under my eyes betrayed my sleepless nights, and I jumped at every sudden noise. During history class, Mr. Reeves pulled me aside. "Emma," he said, his voice low with concern, "I couldn't help but notice you seem troubled. Is everything all right?" I looked up at him, wondering if I could trust him with even a fraction of what I was going through. I haven't been sleeping well," I admitted. "Bad dreams." Mr. Reeves nodded slowly. "Dreams can be powerful things," he mused. "Sometimes they're our mind's way of working through problems we can't face in our waking hours." I hesitated, then decided to take a risk. "Mr. Reeves, what do you know about time manipulation?" His eyebrows shot up. That's an interesting topic. Are you researching something specific? Sort of, I hedged. I've been reading about myths and legends related to people who could control time. But in all the stories, it never ends well for them. Mr. Reeves was silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "Emma, be very careful with this line of inquiry. Some knowledge comes at a great cost." A chill ran down my spine. His words were too similar to what I'd heard in my dreams, to what Harold the librarian had said. "What do you mean?" I pressed. But Mr. Reeves just shook his head. "Just be careful, and if you ever need to talk, my door is always open." That night, as I lay in bed dreading what my dreams might bring, I felt a shift in the air. The temperature in my room seemed to drop, and I had the distinct sensation of being watched. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice quavering. "You know who we are, little timekeeper," came the reply, a chorus of whispers that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I sat up, my heart pounding. In the corner of my room, I saw a shadow darker than the surrounding darkness. It seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. The shadow grew, tendrils of darkness stretching across the room. "We want what is owed. The balance must be restored." "I don't understand," I pleaded. "How can I fix this?" The shadow seemed to smile, a flash of teeth in the darkness. "You can't fix it, child. You can only pay the price." Suddenly, the room around me began to warp and shift. I found myself back in the clock chamber from my earlier dream, but this time it felt more real than ever. "Welcome to the realm between moments," the voice echoed. "Here, we will show you the true consequence of your actions." Before my eyes, scenes began to play out. I saw Jessica, moments before her death, clutching her head in pain. I saw Mrs. Chen reaching for her heart, her face contorted in agony. I saw countless others, strangers whose lives I had unknowingly affected, their final moments replayed in excruciating detail. "Stop!" I screamed, falling to my knees. "Please, I can't take any more." "This is the price of your power," the voice intoned. "For every moment you stole, a life was taken. The debt must be paid." I looked up, tears streaming down my face. How? How can I make this right? The shadow coalesced into a vaguely humanoid shape, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "You cannot undo what has been done, but you can prevent further damage, relinquish your power, return to us what was never meant for mortal hands." "How do I do that?" I asked, desperation clear in my voice. The figure reached out a shadowy hand. "Take my hand, and I will show you the way." I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me not to trust this entity. But what choice did I have? The guilt of what I'd done, however unintentionally, was crushing me. Just as I was about to reach out, a new voice cut through the dream. "Emma! Emma, wake up!" I jolted awake to find my sister shaking me, her face pale with worry. "You were screaming in your sleep," she said. "Are you okay?" I looked around my room, half expecting to see the shadow figure lurking in the corners, but everything was normal. Just another dream. Or was it? "I'm fine," I lied, my voice hoarse. "Just a nightmare." My sister didn't look convinced. "Maybe you should talk to Mom and Dad about seeing someone. These nightmares seem really bad." I shook my head. "No, I'll be okay. Thanks for waking me up." After she left, I sat in the darkness, my mind reeling. The dreams felt so real, the guilt so overwhelming. Was I losing my mind? Or was something truly sinister at work? I thought about what the shadow figure had said about relinquishing my power. Could it really be that simple? But how could I trust anything I experienced in these dreams? As dawn broke, I made a decision. I couldn't keep going like this. The lack of sleep, the constant terror, the crushing guilt. It was all becoming too much to bear. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone and dialed Mr. Reeves's number. It was early, but I hoped he'd understand the urgency. "Hello?" His groggy voice answered. "Mr. Reeves, it's Emma. I need help. Can we talk? It's about time manipulation." There was a long pause on the other end. Then, "Meet me at the school in an hour. Use the side entrance by the gym." As I hung up, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was at a crossroads. Whatever happened next would change everything. The haunting dreams had pushed me to the brink, forcing me to confront the terrible reality of what I'd done. As I got dressed to meet Mr. Reeves, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The girl staring back at me looked haunted, her eyes shadowed with secrets and guilt. I barely recognized myself anymore. "Please," I whispered to my reflection, "let this be the right choice." With a heavy heart and a mind full of terrifying possibilities, I set out to face whatever consequences awaited me. The haunting dreams had shown me the horror of what I'd done. Now it was time to find a way to make it right, if such a thing was even possible. The weight of my secret and the relentless nightmare visions had taken their toll. I found myself withdrawing from everyone and everything I once held dear, consumed by a paralyzing fear that my mere presence could bring harm to those around me. The world that had once seemed so full of possibility now felt like a minefield, with every interaction potentially triggering another tragedy. It started small. I began avoiding crowded hallways at school, taking longer routes to class to minimize contact with others. Lunch periods, once a time for laughter and gossip with friends, became solitary affairs in forgotten corners of the campus. "Emma!" Lily's voice called out one day as I was slipping away from the cafeteria. "Where are you going? We haven't seen you at lunch in days." I froze, my heart racing. Turning slowly, I forced a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Oh, hey, Lily. I just have a lot of studying to do. You know, making up for lost time." Lily's brow furrowed with concern. "Are you okay? You've been acting really weird lately. We're all worried about you." For a moment I was tempted to break down and tell her everything, but the image of Jessica's accusing eyes from my nightmares flashed through my mind and I stepped back. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice brittle. "Really, I just need some space right now." Before she could respond, I turned and hurried away, ignoring the hurt look on her face. It was better this way, I told myself. Better to hurt her feelings than risk her life. At home, I retreated to my room as soon as I arrived, avoiding family dinners and movie nights. My parents' concerned glances and whispered conversations didn't escape my notice, but I couldn't bring myself to engage. How could I sit at the table and pretend everything was normal when I was carrying the weight of multiple deaths on my conscience? One evening, as I was picking at the dinner my mom had left outside my door, I overheard a heated conversation from downstairs. "We can't just let this continue, John." My mom's voice drifted up. "She's withdrawing completely. This isn't healthy." "I know, Sarah," my dad replied, his voice heavy with worry. "But we can't force her to talk if she's not ready. Maybe we should consider professional help." I clenched my fists, fighting back tears. They didn't understand. They couldn't understand. How could I explain to them that their daughter was responsible for multiple deaths? That my very existence put them in danger? The paranoia grew with each passing day. Every unexplained noise, every shadow in the corner of my eye became a potential threat. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, certain that at any moment, the malevolent entity from my dreams would materialize to claim its debt. In class, I couldn't focus on the lessons. Instead, I found myself studying my classmates, searching for signs that they suspected something. Did that sidelong glance mean they knew my secret? Was that whispered conversation about me? During one particularly tense history class, Mr. Reeves called on me. "Emma, can you tell us about the consequences of the Treaty of Versailles?" I blinked, realizing I hadn't heard a word of the lecture. Are you with us, Emma?" Mr. Reeves asked, his voice tinged with concern. I felt the eyes of the entire class on me, their gazes like physical weight. My breath came in short gasps. "I'm sorry," I mumbled, standing abruptly. I have to go." I fled the classroom, ignoring Mr. Reeves calling after me. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face, trying to calm my racing heart. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized the pale, haunted face staring back at me. "Get it together, Emma," I whispered to my reflection. "You can't keep falling apart like this." But even as I said it, I knew it was a losing battle. The isolation was crushing, but the alternative, risking more lives, was unthinkable. As the days wore on, my world shrank to the confines of my room. I stopped attending school altogether, ignoring the concerned calls from teachers and friends. My parents, at their wits' end, finally insisted on a family meeting. "Emma," my mom began, her voice gentle but firm, "we can't go on like this. You haven't left your room in days. You're not eating, not sleeping. Please talk to us." "What's going on?" I sat on my bed, hugging my knees to my chest, unable to meet their eyes. "Nothing's going on," I muttered. "I'm fine." My dad sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Honey, this isn't fine. This isn't you. We're worried sick. Whatever's going on, we can face it together." A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat. Face it together? If only they knew. "You can't help me," I said, my voice cracking. "No one can." "Emma," my mom pleaded, reaching out to touch my arm. I flinched away, and the hurt in her eyes was like a knife to my heart. "Please let us in. We love you. We just want to help." For a moment, I was tempted to tell them everything, to unburden myself of this terrible secret. But the words stuck in my throat. How could I explain something I barely understood myself? "I just need to be alone," I said finally, turning away from them. "Please, just leave me alone." I heard my mom's muffled sob as they left the room, and it took every ounce of willpower not to call them back, to throw myself into their arms and beg for help. But I couldn't. I had to protect them, even if it meant pushing them away. The isolation grew more profound with each passing day. I stopped checking my phone, unable to bear the concerned messages from friends. The few times I ventured out of my room, I felt like a ghost in my own home, disconnected from the normal rhythms of family life. One night, unable to sleep, I crept downstairs for a glass of water. As I passed the living room, I overheard my parents talking in low, worried voices. "Think we should consider having her evaluated," my dad was saying. "This level of withdrawal isn't normal. What if she's, I don't know, having some kind of breakdown?" "I've been researching therapists," my mom replied, her voice thick with unshed tears. "But how do we get her to go? She won't even talk to us anymore." I slunk back upstairs, my throat tight with guilt and fear. They thought I was losing my mind. And maybe I was. How could I be sure that any of this was real? What if the time stopping, the deaths, the nightmares, what if it was all just a product of a fractured psyche? But even as I considered the possibility, I knew deep down that it wasn't true. The weight of my actions, the presence I felt watching me, it was all too real. As my isolation deepened, so did my paranoia. I began to see threats everywhere. The ticking of clocks became a menacing countdown. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord. I covered all the mirrors in my room, unable to shake the feeling that something was watching me from the other side. One afternoon, a knock on my door made me jump. "Emma?" It was Lily's voice. "Your mom let me in. Can we talk?" I pressed myself against the far wall, my heart pounding. "Go away, Lily," I called out, hating the tremor in my voice. "I'm not feeling well." "Emma, please," Lily pleaded. "We're all so worried about you. This isn't like you. Whatever's going on, I want to help." For a moment, I was tempted to open the door, to throw myself into my best friend's arms and confess everything. But then I remembered Jessica's fate, and Mrs. Chen's, and who knew how many others. I couldn't risk Lily becoming another casualty of my cursed power. "I'm sorry, Lily," I said, my voice breaking. I can't see you right now. Please, just go." I heard a soft thud. Lily leaning her forehead against the door, perhaps. "I'm not giving up on you, Emma," she said softly. "Whatever you're going through, you don't have to face it alone." As her footsteps faded away, I slid down the wall, hugging my knees to my chest as silent sobs racked my body. The isolation was a prison of my own making, but I didn't see any other choice. Days blurred together in a haze of fear and loneliness. I barely ate, barely slept. When exhaustion finally claimed me, my dreams were filled with accusing faces and the relentless ticking of clocks counting down to some unknown doom. One night I jolted awake, certain I'd heard something moving in my room. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw a shadow darker than the surrounding gloom coalescing in the corner. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice hoarse with fear. "You know who we are, little timekeeper," came the reply, a chorus of whispers that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I scrambled back against my headboard, my heart pounding. "Leave me alone. I haven't used my power. I'm not hurting anyone anymore." The shadow seemed to grow, tendrils of darkness stretching across the room. "But the debt remains unpaid," it hissed. "The balance must be restored." "How?" I cried, tears streaming down my face. "Tell me how to fix this." But the shadow was already fading, leaving behind only a lingering chill and the echoes of mocking laughter. I spent the rest of the night huddled in the corner of my room, jumping at every creak and shadow. When dawn finally broke, I looked in the mirror and hardly recognized the gaunt, wild-eyed girl staring back at me. This couldn't go on. The isolation, the paranoia, it was destroying me. But what could I do? Who could I possibly turn to with something like this? As if in answer to my unspoken question, my phone buzzed for the first time in days. It was a text from Mr. Reeves. "Emma, I'm concerned about your prolonged absence. If you need to talk about anything, my door is always open." I stared at the message for a long time, my mind racing. Mr. Reeves had hinted before that he knew more than he was letting on. Could he possibly understand what I was going through? Could he help? The thought of reaching out, of breaking my self-imposed isolation, was terrifying. But as I looked around my room at the physical manifestation of my paranoia, the covered mirrors, the clock with its batteries removed, the barricaded window, I realized I couldn't go on like this. With trembling hands, I picked up my phone and typed out a reply. "Mr. Reeves, I need help. It's about time manipulation. Can we talk?" As I hit send, I felt a shift in the air, as if the very fabric of reality was reacting to my decision. Whether I was taking the first step toward salvation or sealing my fate, I couldn't say. But one thing was certain. The isolation and paranoia had driven me to the brink. Whatever came next, it had to be better than this living nightmare. Little did I know my decision to reach out would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything I thought I knew about my power, my world, and myself. The isolation was ending, but the true test was just beginning. The weight of uncertainty had become unbearable. After weeks of isolation and paralyzing fear, I knew I had to do something, anything, to understand the true nature of my power and its consequences. With trembling hands and a racing heart, I made the decision to conduct one final dangerous experiment. I chose a Saturday when my parents would be out of the house for most of the day. As I heard their car pull out of the driveway, a mix of relief and dread washed over me. I was alone, truly alone, for the first time in what felt like ages. "Okay, Emma," I muttered to myself, pacing my room. "You can do this, you need to know for sure." I had spent days planning this experiment, agonizing over every detail. The goal was simple yet terrifying. Use my power one more time, in a controlled environment, and document everything that happened afterward. If my suspicions were correct, if my ability truly was linked to the deaths around me, I needed to know beyond a shadow of a doubt. With shaking hands, I set up my laptop to record video. I placed my phone nearby, ready to live stream to a private account I had set up. If anything happened to me, there would be a record. Taking a deep breath, I looked directly into the camera. "My name is Emma Lawson," I began, my voice quavering. "I'm 17 years old, and I have the ability to stop time. This video is a documentation of an experiment to determine the consequences of using this power." I paused, swallowing hard. "If you're watching this and I'm not around anymore, please show this to my parents. Mom, Dad, I'm so sorry for everything. I love you." Wiping away a tear, I steeled myself for what came next. I had chosen a simple task. I would stop time, move a book from my desk to my bed, and then let time resume. Innocent enough, but if my fears were correct, the consequences could be dire. "Okay," I said to the camera. "I'm going to stop time now. The current time is 10:17 a.m. Closing my eyes, I focused on that familiar mental push, feeling the world grind to a halt around me. When I opened my eyes, the scene was eerily still. Dust motes hung suspended in the air, caught in a beam of sunlight from my window. Moving quickly, I crossed the room and picked up the book from my desk. As I did, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I could have sworn I heard a faint whisper at the edge of my hearing. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding flat in the frozen air. "Is someone there?" No response came, but the feeling of a malevolent presence grew stronger. Shuddering, I placed the book on my bed and hurried back to my original position. "Okay," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm going to let time resume now." With another mental push, the world lurched back into motion. The sudden return of normal sounds, birds chirping outside, the hum of my laptop, was almost overwhelming. I turned to the camera, my heart pounding. Time has resumed. The book has been moved, as you can see. The current time is still 10:17 a.m. No time has passed. Now came the hard part, waiting and watching for any consequences of my actions. I had decided to monitor local news and social media for the next 24 hours, looking for any unexplained deaths or accidents. The first few hours were uneventful. I paced my room, checked my phone obsessively, and jumped at every unexpected noise. By mid-afternoon, I had almost convinced myself that I had been paranoid, that there was no connection between my power and the tragedies that had occurred. Then, at exactly 3:33 p.m., my phone buzzed with a local news alert. My blood ran cold as I read the headline, "Local teen collapses at mall, cause unknown." With shaking hands, I opened the article and began to read aloud for the camera. 16-year-old Michael Chen collapsed suddenly while shopping with friends at Westfield Mall this afternoon. Witnesses report that Chen showed no signs of distress before falling unconscious. He was rushed to Mercy General Hospital, where he remains in critical condition. I felt the blood drain from my face. Michael Chen, he was in my biology class. We weren't close, but I knew him. And now, just hours after I had used my power, he was fighting for his life. "This can't be a coincidence," I whispered, looking into the camera with wide, frightened eyes. "It's happening again. I did this." As if to underscore my words, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Lily. "OMG, Emma, did you hear about Michael? It's so scary. They don't know what happened to him. I really wish you were here. We're all freaking out." I stared at the message, guilt and fear churning in my stomach. I wanted so badly to respond, to reach out to my friends, but how could I? How could I face them knowing what I had done? As the hours ticked by, I remained glued to my devices, watching for any updates on Michael's condition. My parents returned home, calling up to check on me, but I feigned illness to avoid facing them. "Emma?" My mom's voice came through the door. "Are you sure you don't want some soup or something?" "I'm fine, Mom," I called back, wincing at the lie. "Just need to sleep it off." Around midnight, exhaustion finally overtook me, and I drifted into a fitful sleep. My dreams were a chaotic swirl of ticking clocks, accusatory faces, and shadowy figures just out of sight. I jolted awake at 3:33 a.m., gasping for breath. The room felt colder than it should have, and I had the distinct sensation of being watched. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. A low chuckle emanated from the darkest corner of my room. "You know who we are, little timekeeper," came the response, a chorus of whispers that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I scrambled to turn on my bedside lamp, but it didn't seem to penetrate the unnatural darkness gathering in the corner. "What do you want?" I demanded, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. The darkness seemed to coalesce into a vaguely humanoid shape, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "We want what is owed," it hissed. "The balance must be maintained." "I don't understand," I pleaded. "Why is this happening? I never meant to hurt anyone." The figure moved closer, and I felt an icy chill permeate the air. "Intent is irrelevant," it said. "You have meddled with forces beyond your comprehension. Every action has a consequence. Every moment stolen must be repaid." Tears streamed down my face as the full weight of what I had done crashed over me. "How do I stop this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "How do I make it right?" The figure seemed to smile, a flash of teeth in the darkness. "You can't make it right, child. You can only pay the price." Before I could respond, the figure dissolved into shadows, leaving me alone in my suddenly too bright room. I sat there shaking until dawn broke. As soon as it was a reasonable hour, I checked for news updates. My heart sank as I read the latest headline: "Teen dies in hospital, doctors baffled." Michael Chen was dead, and it was my fault. I turned to the camera, which had been recording this whole time. My face was pale, my eyes red-rimmed from crying and lack of sleep. "It's confirmed," I said, my voice hollow. "My experiment was successful, in the worst possible way. Using my power directly led to Michael Chen's death. I'm a murderer." The weight of that statement hung in the air. I had suspected, had feared, but now I knew for certain. My power came with a terrible price, one paid in human lives. As I sat there, grappling with the horrifying reality of what I had done, my phone buzzed. It was another text from Lily. "Emma, please, we really need you right now. Everyone's devastated about Michael. Can we come over?" I stared at the message, tears blurring my vision. How could I face them? How could I look Lily in the eye, knowing that my actions had caused this tragedy? But as I contemplated retreating further into isolation, a new thought occurred to me. Maybe this was my punishment. Maybe facing the consequences of my actions, bearing witness to the pain I had caused, was part of the price I had to pay. With trembling fingers, I typed out a reply. "Okay, you can come over." As I waited for Lily and the others to arrive, I turned back to the camera. "I don't know what happens next," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I know I can't keep this secret anymore. The cost is too high. I need help." I thought about Mr. Reeves, about his cryptic warnings and offers of assistance. Maybe he knew more than he was letting on. Maybe he could help me understand what was happening, help me find a way to stop it. A knock at my bedroom door made me jump. "Emma?" It was my mom. "Lily and some of your other friends are here. They say you told them they could come over." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Yeah, Mom. I'll be right down." Before I left my room, I looked into the camera one last time. "This experiment is over," I said firmly, "but I'm afraid the real test is just beginning." As I headed downstairs to face my friends, to confront the consequences of my actions, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into something I couldn't possibly be prepared for. The dangerous experiment had confirmed my worst fears, but it had also steeled my resolve. I couldn't undo what I had done, but maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to stop it from happening again. Little did I know, the revelations and challenges that awaited me would test me in ways I could never have imagined. The experiment was over, But the true ordeal was just beginning. The weight of what I had done crashed over me like a tidal wave, threatening to drown me in an ocean of remorse. The faces of those who had died because of my careless use of power haunted my every waking moment, and my dreams were a torment of accusatory stares and silent screams. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring blankly at the wall. The house was quiet. My parents had gone to work, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The silence felt oppressive, as if the very air was heavy with the weight of my sins. "I'm sorry," I whispered to the empty room, my voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." But apologies felt hollow, inadequate in the face of the lives I had taken. Jessica, Mrs. Chen, Michael Chen, and who knew how many others. Their deaths were on my hands. The guilt was a physical presence, a knot in my stomach that never eased, a pressure on my chest that made it hard to breathe. A notification on my phone broke the silence, making me jump. It was a reminder for Michael Chen's memorial service later that day. I had been avoiding thinking about it, but now the reality crashed over me anew. I would have to face my classmates, look into the eyes of Michael's family, all while carrying the terrible secret of my responsibility. "I can't do this," I muttered, running my hands through my tangled hair. "How can I face them?" But even as I said it, I knew I had to go. Hiding away, wallowing in my guilt, it wouldn't bring anyone back. The least I could do was bear witness to the pain I had caused. As I got dressed for the service, every movement felt like a monumental effort. I caught sight of myself in the mirror and barely recognized the pale, haunted face staring back at me. Dark circles under my eyes betrayed my sleepless nights, and I had lost weight, my clothes hanging loosely on my frame. "You did this," I told my reflection, my voice low and bitter. "You played with power you didn't understand, and now others have paid the price." The drive to the school where the service was being held was torturous. Every familiar landmark seemed to mock me with memories of a time before I discovered my power, before I became a killer. As I walked into the auditorium, the hushed conversations and muffled sobs hit me like a physical blow. Everywhere I looked, I saw grief-stricken faces, friends comforting each other, teachers trying to maintain composure. Lily spotted me and hurried over, her eyes red from crying. "Emma," she said, pulling me into a tight hug, "I'm so glad you came. We've all been so worried about you." I returned the hug stiffly, fighting the urge to push her away. I didn't deserve comfort or concern. How are you holding up?" I managed to ask. Lily shook her head, fresh tears welling in her eyes. "It's just so unfair, you know? Michael was such a good person. And for him to die so suddenly for no reason. It doesn't make sense." Each word was like a knife to my heart. I wanted to scream, to confess, to beg for forgiveness. Instead, I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As we took our seats, I found myself looking at the large photo of Michael displayed on the stage. His smile, frozen in time, seemed to bore into me. I could almost hear his voice, accusing me. "You did this. You stole my future." The service was a blur of eulogies and shared memories. Michael's parents spoke, their voices choked with grief as they talked about their son's dreams, his kindness, his potential, all cut short. Each word hammered home the magnitude of what I had done. As the final speaker finished, the principal invited anyone who wanted to share a memory of Michael to come forward. Without consciously deciding to, I found myself standing, my legs shaky as I made my way to the microphone. My voice faltered, and I cleared my throat. "I didn't know Michael as well as many of you did, but I remember one day in biology class." I recounted a small moment, Michael helping me understand a difficult concept, his patience and kindness. As I spoke, the memory of that day mixed with the knowledge of what I had done, and I felt tears begin to fall. "I'm sorry," I choked out. "I'm so sorry." I stumbled back to my seat, aware of the confused and concerned looks from those around me. Lily squeezed my hand, misinterpreting my breakdown as simple grief rather than the crushing guilt it truly was. After the service, as people milled about sharing condolences, I found myself face to face with Michael's mother. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face etched with a sorrow so profound it took my breath away. "Thank you for sharing that memory," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's comforting to know Michael touched so many lives." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. She reached out and squeezed my arm gently before moving on to speak with others. The touch of her hand felt like it burned, and I had to fight the urge to recoil. How could she thank me when I was the reason for her pain? As soon as I could, I fled the auditorium, gasping for air as I burst out into the parking lot. I leaned against my car, struggling to breathe through the panic and guilt threatening to overwhelm me. "Emma?" A voice made me jump. It was Mr. Reeves, concern etched on his face. "Are you all right?" I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "All right?" "No, Mr. Reeves, I'm about as far from all right as it's possible to be." He was silent for a moment, studying me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. Then he said, "This isn't just about Michael, is it? There's something more going on with you." For a wild moment, I considered telling him everything. The words were on the tip of my tongue. I can stop time and people die when I do it. But the magnitude of that confession, the potential consequences, stopped me. Instead, I just shook my head. I can't talk about it." Mr. Reeves nodded slowly. "I understand. But Emma, whatever it is you're going through, whatever burden you're carrying, you don't have to face it alone. When you're ready to talk, I'm here." As he walked away, his words echoed in my mind. Don't have to face it alone. But how could I share this? How could I admit to anyone what I had done? That night, sleep eluded me once again. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Michael's face, heard his mother's grief-stricken voice. The guilt was a living thing, clawing at my insides, demanding acknowledgement. In the early hours of the morning, I found myself sitting at my desk, pen in hand, pouring out my guilt onto paper. "Dear Jessica, Mrs. Chen, Michael, and all the others I'll never know about. I'm sorry." Those words feel so inadequate, so small in the face of what I've done, but they're all I have. I never meant to hurt anyone. I didn't know, couldn't have imagined the consequences of my actions. But ignorance is no excuse, is it? I played with forces I didn't understand, drunk on the power and the possibilities. And you paid the price for my arrogance, my carelessness. Your lives, your futures, your dreams, all cut short because of me. The guilt is eating me alive. Every moment, every breath feels like a theft. I'm alive, and you're not, and it's not fair. I don't know how to live with this knowledge, how to move forward carrying the weight of what I've done. I wish I could turn back time. Ironic, isn't it? I can stop time, but I can't undo what's been done. I can't bring you back. All I can do is carry this guilt, let it reshape me, use it as a constant reminder of the cost of my actions. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I promise you this. I will find a way to stop this. I will do whatever it takes to ensure no one else dies because of my power. Your deaths won't be in vain. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. As I signed my name at the bottom of the letter, tears blurring my vision, I felt a shift in the air. The temperature in my room seemed to drop, and I had the distinct sensation of being watched. "Are you here to torment me again?" I called out, my voice hoarse. "Go ahead. Whatever you do to me, I deserve it." A chilling laugh echoed through the room. "Oh, little timekeeper," the now familiar voice whispered. "Your guilt is delicious, but it changes nothing. The debt remains unpaid." I spun around, trying to locate the source of the voice. "What do you want from me?" I demanded. "How do I make this right?" The shadows in the corner of my room seemed to deepen, coalescing into a vaguely humanoid shape. "You can't make it right," it hissed. "The lives you've taken are gone forever. But you can prevent more deaths, relinquish your power, Return to us what was never meant for mortal hands. I stared at the shadowy figure, my heart pounding. How? Tell me how to give it up and I'll do it. I don't want this power anymore. The figure seemed to smile, a flash of teeth in the darkness. It's not that simple, child. The price is high. Are you prepared to pay it? Before I could respond, a knock at my door made me jump. Emma? It was my mom. Are you okay? I heard voices. I turned back to the corner, but the shadowy figure was gone. The room was normal, no trace of the otherworldly encounter. I'm fine, Mom, I called back, my voice shaky. Just talking to myself. As I heard her footsteps retreating, I sank to the floor, my mind reeling. The guilt was still there, a constant ache in my chest. But now it was tinged with a desperate hope. There was a way to give up my power, to stop the deaths. But at what cost? I looked at the letter I had written, the outpouring of my guilt and remorse. With a sudden decision, I folded it carefully and placed it in an envelope. I didn't know if I would ever have the courage to share my secret, to confess what I had done. But having it written down, having acknowledged my guilt in some tangible way, felt like a first step. As dawn broke, I made a vow to myself and to those I had unknowingly harmed. I would find a way to rid myself of this power, no matter the personal cost. I would ensure that no one else died because of my actions. The guilt would always be there, a constant companion and reminder of what I had done. But maybe, just maybe, I could use it as a driving force for redemption. As I finally drifted off to sleep, exhausted by emotion and confession, I couldn't shake the feeling that my journey was far from over. The guilt had brought me to this point, but what lay ahead was still shrouded in mystery and danger. Little did I know, the path to redemption would be far more perilous and painful than I could have ever imagined. I had reached my breaking point. The deaths, the guilt, the constant nightmares. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get rid of this cursed power no matter what it took. But the more I tried, the more hopeless it seemed. Each attempt to rid myself of the power ended in failure, and with each failure my desperation grew. My first attempt was a simple one. I figured if I just stopped using my power, the deaths would stop. For a week I resisted every urge to manipulate time. I lived my life as normally as I could, avoiding any situation where my power might activate. But the deaths didn't stop. 2 classmates died in a car accident, and my neighbor's son drowned in a swimming pool. I hadn't used my power once, but the deaths continued. The realization hit me like a freight train. My power wasn't just triggered by my use of it. It had a mind of its own, and it wasn't going to stop until it had claimed its due. Determined to find another solution, I delved into the dark corners of the internet, searching for anything that might help. Late one night, I stumbled upon a forum dedicated to the occult. A user named Shadow Seeker claimed to have experience with supernatural curses. I reached out, desperate for any kind of guidance. Please, I typed, my hands shaking. I need help. I have a power that's killing people, and I don't know how to stop it. The response came quickly. Tell me more about your power, Shadow Seeker replied. What exactly can you do? I can stop time, I wrote. But every time I do, someone close to me dies. I didn't ask for this power, and I don't want it anymore. There was a long pause before Shadow Seeker responded. Your situation is grave. This power is not something you can simply discard. It sounds like a binding curse. The entity that granted you this power is feeding off the chaos and death it causes. You'll need to perform a ritual to sever the bond. My heart leaped with a mixture of hope and fear. What kind of ritual? I asked. I can guide you through it, Shadow Seeker replied. But be warned, it's dangerous. You'll need to gather specific items and perform the ritual at midnight on the night of a full moon. I didn't care about the danger. I was willing to try anything. Shadow Seeker gave me a list of items: a black candle, a silver dagger, a vial of my own blood, and a piece of obsidian. I set about gathering the items, my desperation driving me forward. The night of the full moon arrived, and I was ready. I had set up everything in my room, drawing a circle of salt on the floor and placing the items in the center. I lit the black candle and took a deep breath, the air heavy with anticipation. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Shadow Seeker's message flashed on my phone screen. "Once you start, there's no turning back." I nodded to myself, though no one was there to see it. "I'm sure," I typed back. "I have to try." Following Shadow Seeker's instructions, I pricked my finger with the silver dagger and let a few drops of blood fall into the vial. I placed the obsidian in the center of the circle and began to chant the words Shadow Seeker had provided. The air grew colder, and the flame of the candle flickered wildly. Suddenly, a dark shadow began to form in the center of the circle. My heart raced, but I continued the chant, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my insides. The shadow took shape, a figure with glowing eyes and a malevolent presence. "You dare to summon me?" The figure hissed, its voice echoing through the room. "I want to end this," I said, my voice trembling but determined. "I want to be free of this power." The figure laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You cannot rid yourself of what is bound to you. The deaths will continue, and there is nothing you can do to stop it." "I refuse to believe that," I said, my hands clenching into fists. "There has to be a way." The figure's eyes glowed brighter. "Very well. If you truly wish to be free, you must make a sacrifice. A life for a life. Your own life." My blood ran cold. "You want me to kill myself?" The figure nodded slowly. "It is the only way to break the bond. But be warned, even in death you may not find peace. The entity that granted you this power may still claim your soul." I stared at the figure, my mind racing. Could I really do it? Could I end my own life to save others? The thought terrified me, but the alternative was unbearable. More people would die because of me. I need time to think," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure's form began to waver. "Time is running out, little timekeeper. Make your choice and make it soon." With that, the figure vanished, leaving me alone in the darkness. I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. How could I choose between my own life and the lives of others? The weight of the decision crushed me, and I felt more hopeless than ever. Days passed, and I struggled with the decision. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think of anything else. My parents noticed the change in me and grew increasingly worried, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth. One evening, as I sat in my room staring blankly at the wall, there was a knock on my door. "Emma." My mom's voice was soft, concerned. "Can we talk?" I wiped my eyes and tried to compose myself. "Yeah, come in." She entered the room and sat down beside me on the bed. "What's going on, sweetie? You've been so distant lately. We're really worried about you." I took a deep breath, the weight of my secret threatening to suffocate me. "Mom, I don't know how to say this." She reached out and took my hand, her grip warm and reassuring. "You can tell me anything, Emma. Whatever it is, we'll get through it together." Tears welled up in my eyes again. "Mom, I have this power. I can stop time, but every time I use it, someone dies. I didn't ask for it, and I don't want it, but I don't know how to get rid of it." She stared at me, her expression a mix of shock and confusion. "Emma, I don't even know what to say. Are you sure this isn't just a nightmare or a hallucination?" I shook my head vehemently. "No, it's real. I tried to get rid of it, but nothing works. The deaths keep happening, and I don't know what to do." My mom pulled me into a tight hug, her warmth providing a small measure of comfort. "We'll find a way, Emma. I don't know how, but we'll find a way." Her words gave me a glimmer of hope, but the shadow of doubt still loomed large. What if there was no way to break the bond without sacrificing my own life? Could I bring myself to make that choice? That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The figure's words echoed in my head. Make your choice, and make it soon. As dawn approached, I made a decision. I couldn't live with the guilt any longer. If sacrificing myself was the only way to stop the deaths, then so be it. I wouldn't let anyone else suffer because of me. I wrote a letter to my parents, explaining everything and begging for their forgiveness. Tears blurred my vision as I poured out my heart, but I knew it was the right thing to do. With the letter in hand, I made my way to the roof of our apartment building. The early morning light cast a soft glow over the city, and a sense of calm washed over me. I took a deep breath and stepped to the edge, my heart pounding in my chest. Emma, no! I turned to see my dad racing toward me, his face etched with panic. Please, don't do this, he pleaded, his voice trembling. Dad, I have to, I said, tears streaming down my face. It's the only way to stop the deaths. There has to be another way, he insisted, reaching out to me. We'll find it together. Just come down from there, please. I hesitated, my resolve wavering. Could I really go through with this? The thought of leaving my family behind, of causing them more pain, tore at my heart. Dad, My voice broke, and I took a step back from the edge. I don't know what to do. He reached me and pulled me into a tight embrace, his grip strong and reassuring. We'll figure it out, Emma. I promise. Just don't give up. Don't leave us. As I clung to my dad, sobbing into his shoulder, a sense of relief washed over me. I didn't have to face this alone. My family was here for me, and together, we would find a way to break the curse. In the days that followed, we sought help from experts in the supernatural, researched every possible avenue, and consulted with those who had experience with curses and dark powers. It was a long and arduous journey, but with my family's support, I found the strength to keep going. We eventually found a ritual that promised to sever the bond without requiring a life sacrifice. The morning after my failed attempt to end my own life, I awoke to find my parents hovering near my bed, their faces etched with worry and exhaustion. The weight of my guilt and the sense of helplessness were nearly unbearable, but the warmth of their presence gave me a fragile sense of hope. We'll get through this together, my mom said, brushing a strand of hair from my face. We'll find a way. Her words were comforting, but deep down, I doubted there was any solution to my cursed power. How could I expect them to understand the true depth of my despair? That afternoon, as I sat in the living room, mindlessly flipping through an old photo album, the doorbell rang. I glanced at my mom, who was in the kitchen. She motioned for me to answer it. I opened the door to find an elderly man standing there. His appearance was striking. A tall figure with a long, flowing coat, a wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow over his face, and piercing blue eyes that seemed to look right through me. Emma Lawson? He asked, his voice a deep, rich timbre that resonated in my bones. Yes, I stammered, taken aback by his presence. Who are you? My name is Alistair. May I come in? I believe I can help you with your predicament. I hesitated, glancing back at my mom, who had come to the doorway. She looked just as bewildered as I felt. Who are you, and what do you want with my daughter? She asked, her protective instincts flaring. Alistair removed his hat, revealing a mane of silver hair. I understand your concern, Mrs. Lawson. I am here to help your daughter. She is afflicted by a power that is beyond her control, and I believe I have the knowledge to assist her. Something in his eyes conveyed sincerity and a deep understanding of my situation. Despite my reservations, I felt an inexplicable pull to trust him. Please come in, I said, stepping aside. Alistair entered the house, his presence filling the room with a sense of gravitas. He glanced around, taking in the surroundings before settling his gaze on me. I know what you are going through, Emma, he began. I have encountered others with similar abilities. The power to stop time is a gift and a curse, and it often comes with a heavy price. My mom's eyes widened in shock. How do you know about her power? Alistair smiled gently. I have spent my life studying the supernatural and the arcane. Your daughter's ability is rare but not unheard of. The entity that granted her this power feeds on the chaos and death it causes. I felt a chill run down my spine. So it's true. There's no way to stop it? There is always a way, Alistair replied. His eyes locked onto mine, but it requires great sacrifice and courage. I have come to offer my assistance in finding a solution. My mom and I exchanged a glance, a mixture of hope and fear in our eyes. What do we need to do? She asked, her voice trembling. Alistair took a deep breath. First, we must understand the nature of the entity that granted Emma her power. To do this, we need to perform a ritual to summon and communicate with it. This is a dangerous undertaking, but it is the only way to gain the knowledge we need. Dangerous how? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The entity will resist being summoned, Alistair explained. It will try to deceive and harm us. We must be prepared for anything. Despite the fear gnawing at my insides, I felt a glimmer of hope. This was the first real lead I had encountered. I'm willing to try, I said, my voice steadying with determination. Very well, Alistair nodded. We will need certain items for the ritual. Candles, incense, a mirror, and a personal item of yours, Emma. Something that has a strong emotional connection to you. My mom and I set about gathering the items while Alistair prepared the living room for the ritual. He arranged the candles in a circle and placed the mirror in the center, its reflective surface facing up. Emma, he said, turning to me, place your personal item in the center of the mirror. I hesitated, then removed the necklace Jessica had given me for my birthday, the last gift I received from her before she died. I placed it gently on the mirror, my heart aching with the memory. Alistair lit the candles and incense, the room filling with a heady, otherworldly scent. Sit in the circle and hold hands, he instructed. Close your eyes and focus on the entity. Picture it in your mind. Feel its presence. I squeezed my mom's hand tightly as we formed a circle. Alistair's voice took on a rhythmic, chanting quality, the words foreign and ancient. The air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over us. As the chanting continued, I felt a pressure building in the room, as if the very air was being compressed. A low, guttural growl echoed from the corners, sending shivers down my spine. Do not break the circle, Alistair warned. No matter what happens, stay focused. The growl grew louder and the candles flickered wildly. The mirror began to vibrate, the necklace shimmering with an eerie light. Who dares summon me? A voice hissed, filled with anger and malice. I opened my eyes to see a dark, shadowy figure forming above the mirror. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its presence filled the room with a palpable sense of dread. We seek answers, Alistair said firmly. We demand to know the nature of your bond with this girl. The entity laughed, a sound that sent chills through my body. You are fools to challenge me. The girl is mine, her soul bound to me by the threads of time. No, I said, my voice trembling but resolute. I refuse to let you take any more lives. Tell us how to break the bond. The entity's eyes narrowed, its form shifting and writhing. There is no escape. The bond can only be broken by a sacrifice of equal value. What kind of sacrifice? Alistair pressed. Her own life, the entity hissed. Only through death can she be freed. A silence fell over the room, the weight of the entity's words pressing down on us. My mom tightened her grip on my hand, her eyes filled with tears. There must be another way, she pleaded. Please, tell us. The entity laughed again, a cruel, mocking sound. You think you can bargain with me? The girl is mine, and there is nothing you can do to change that. A surge of anger and defiance welled up within me. I won't give up, I said through gritted teeth. There has to be another way. Alistair's eyes flickered with determination. You underestimate the strength of human will, he said to the entity. We will find a way with or without your cooperation. The entity's form seemed to flicker, its eyes burning with rage. "You will regret this," it snarled. "The girl's fate is sealed." With a final, ear-piercing shriek, the entity vanished, the candles extinguishing in a rush of cold air. The room fell silent, the oppressive presence lifting. I collapsed onto the floor, my body trembling with exhaustion and fear. My mom wrapped her arms around me, her tears mingling with mine. "Emma," Alistair said softly, kneeling beside us. "The entity spoke of a sacrifice. While it claimed your life is the only way, there may be other avenues we haven't explored. We must remain steadfast and search for alternative solutions." I nodded weakly, the weight of the encounter pressing down on me. "Thank you, Alistair. I don't know what I would do without your help." "You are not alone in this, Emma," he replied, his eyes filled with compassion. "We will find a way to break the bond and free you from this curse." Over the following weeks, Alistair became a constant presence in our lives. He guided us through various rituals and protective measures, all aimed at weakening the entity's hold on me. My parents, though initially skeptical, grew to trust him, their hope rekindled by his unwavering determination. One evening, as we sat around the kitchen table poring over ancient texts and grimoires, Alistair leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "There is one possibility we have yet to explore," he said slowly. "A cleansing ritual performed at a sacred site. Such places are imbued with powerful energies that may help sever the bond." "Where do we find a sacred site?" my dad asked, his brow furrowed. Alistair smiled faintly. "There is one not far from here, an ancient grove, once revered by the indigenous people of this land. It is said to possess a natural connection to the spiritual realm." "How do we perform the ritual?" I asked, my heart pounding with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "We will need to gather specific herbs and stones and prepare a sacred circle," Alistair explained. "The ritual must be performed at midnight under the light of a full moon. It will require immense concentration and willpower." My mom squeezed my hand reassuringly. "We'll do whatever it takes, Emma. We'll go to this grove and perform the ritual together." As the night of the full moon approached, we gathered the necessary items and made our way to the ancient grove. The forest was dense and silent, the air heavy with the scent of pine and earth. The moon cast an ethereal glow over the landscape, illuminating the path ahead. We arrived at the grove, its towering trees forming a natural circle around a clearing. Alistair set to work arranging the herbs and stones while my parents and I prepared the sacred circle. As midnight approached, we stood within the circle, holding hands and closing our eyes. Alistair's voice rose in a chant, the ancient words resonating with a deep, primal power. The air grew colder, and a sense of foreboding settled over us. The candles flickered, casting dancing shadows on the trees. "Focus, Emma," Alistair said, his voice steady and commanding. "Feel the energy of this place, let it flow through you." I took a deep breath, feeling the power of the grove pulsing beneath my feet. I pictured the entity in my mind, its dark, malevolent form, and the bond that connected us. "By the light of the moon and the power of this sacred grove," Alistair intoned, "we call upon the spirits of the earth and sky to sever the bond that binds this girl." A low, rumbling growl echoed through the clearing, the ground trembling beneath us. The entity's presence surged, its anger palpable. "You cannot escape me," it hissed, its voice filled with rage. "You are mine." "We will break this bond," Alistair declared, his voice unwavering. "By the power of the sacred grove, we command you to release her." The candles flared, their flames turning an unnatural shade of blue. The air crackled with energy, the tension building to a breaking point. I focused all my willpower, picturing the bond snapping, the entity's hold on me breaking. "I will be free," I whispered, my voice filled with determination. With a final, earth-shaking roar, the entity's presence dissipated, the oppressive weight lifting from my shoulders. The candles flickered and went out, plunging the grove into darkness. A profound silence fell over the clearing, the only sound our ragged breathing. I collapsed to my knees, tears streaming down my face. "It's over," Alistair said softly, his voice filled with awe. "The bond is broken." My parents rushed to my side, their faces etched with relief and joy. "Emma, you're free," my mom whispered, hugging me tightly. I looked up at Alistair, gratitude and disbelief flooding my heart. "Thank you," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "I don't know how to repay you." He smiled gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You owe me nothing, Emma. Your courage and determination were the true keys to breaking the bond. You have a bright future ahead of you, free from the shadow of the entity." As we made our way back through the forest, the first light of dawn breaking through the trees, I felt a profound sense of peace and hope. The nightmare was over, and I was free to live my life without the fear of causing more deaths. With my family by my side and the memory of Alistair's guidance, I knew I could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The mysterious stranger had come into my life when I needed him most, and his wisdom and support had given me the strength to overcome the darkness. The journey to break the bond had been long and arduous, but it had taught me the power of love, determination, and the importance of never giving up hope. As we walked into the light of a new day, I felt ready to embrace the future, free at last from the curse that had haunted me for so long. The weight of my cursed power had driven me to the brink of despair, but with Alistair's help, I found new hope. The rituals, the strange encounters, and the dark entity had all pointed to a deeper truth that I needed to uncover. The key to breaking the curse lay hidden in the past, in the origins of my power. With Alistair's guidance, I embarked on a journey to uncover the truth. Alistair and I spent countless hours researching ancient texts and grimoires, searching for any clue that might shed light on the entity that had bound itself to me. My parents were supportive, though they worried about the toll it was taking on me. "Emma, are you sure you're okay?" my mom asked one evening as she brought me a cup of tea. "You've been working so hard on this." I gave her a tired smile. "I have to do this, Mom. I need to understand what I'm dealing with." She nodded, though her concern didn't fade. "Just promise me you'll take care of yourself." "I promise," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure I could keep that promise. Late one night, as Alistair and I pored over a particularly ancient and fragile manuscript, something caught my eye. The text was written in a language I couldn't read, but there were illustrations that depicted a figure surrounded by swirling energy, similar to how I felt when I used my power. "Alistair, look at this," I said, pointing to the page. "Does this look familiar to you?" He leaned in, examining the illustrations closely. "It does," he said slowly. "This appears to be an ancient depiction of a time manipulator. The energy surrounding the figure indicates a powerful connection to the temporal realm." I felt a surge of excitement. Could this be related to my power? "It's possible," he replied. "We need to find a translation of this text. It might hold the key to understanding the origins of your power." The next day, we visited a local university, hoping to find someone who could help us translate the manuscript. After several inquiries, we were directed to Professor Elena Vasquez, an expert in ancient languages and mythologies. As we entered her office, the walls lined with books and artifacts, she looked up from her desk and smiled warmly. "How can I help you today?" Alistair explained our situation, showing her the manuscript. She examined it carefully, her eyes widening with recognition. "This is a remarkable find," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "This text is written in an ancient language known as Archaic Celestian. It's incredibly rare, but I can translate it for you." "Thank you so much," I said, my voice filled with relief. "This means a lot to us." Professor Vasquez nodded, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. "I'll need some time to work on this. Can you leave the manuscript with me for a few days?" "Of course," Alistair said. "We'll check back in a few days." The waiting was agonizing. I spent those days on edge, unable to focus on anything else. My dreams were filled with images of the swirling energy and the dark entity, taunting me with its presence. Finally, the day came to return to the university. Professor Vasquez greeted us with a wide smile, her excitement palpable. "I've translated the manuscript," she said, handing us a neatly typed document. "It's a fascinating text. It details the origins of a power similar to yours, Emma." I took the document, my hands trembling. "What does it say?" Professor Vasquez settled into her chair, her expression serious. "The manuscript tells the story of a group of ancient mystics known as the Temporal Guardians. They possessed the ability to manipulate time, but their power came from a pact with a powerful entity from another realm. This entity granted them their abilities, but at a steep price: the lives of those close to them." I felt a chill run down my spine. "So my power comes from a similar pact?" "Yes," she said. "The entity feeds on the temporal energy generated by the use of your power, and it demands a constant supply of life force. The Guardians eventually realized the cost was too high, and they sought to break the pact. They discovered that the only way to sever the bond was to confront the entity in its own realm and destroy the source of its power." "How did they do that?" Alistair asked, his voice filled with urgency. Professor Vasquez pointed to a section of the translation. "They used a ritual to open a portal to the entity's realm. There they confronted it and destroyed its source of power, a relic known as the Temporal Nexus." "So I have to do the same thing," I said, my voice filled with determination. "I have to confront the entity and destroy the Temporal Nexus." "It's incredibly dangerous," Alistair warned. "The entity will do everything in its power to stop you, and there's no guarantee you'll succeed." "I don't have a choice," I said, meeting his gaze. "I can't let anyone else die because of me. I have to try." Alistair nodded, his expression grim but resolute. "Very well. We'll prepare for the ritual." The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. Alistair and I gathered the necessary ingredients for the ritual, while Professor Vasquez provided us with guidance on the ancient incantations. My parents, though terrified, supported my decision, their love giving me the strength to face what lay ahead. On the night of the ritual, we gathered in the grove, where we had previously broken the bond. The full moon cast an eerie glow over the clearing, the air heavy with anticipation. Alistair lit the candles and incense, the scent filling the air. Professor Vasquez joined us, her presence a reassuring source of knowledge and strength. "Are you ready?" Alistair asked, his eyes searching mine. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "I'm ready." We formed a circle, holding hands as Alistair began to chant the incantation. The air crackled with energy, the candles flickering wildly. A low, rumbling growl echoed through the clearing, the ground trembling beneath our feet. The portal began to form in the center of the circle, a swirling vortex of darkness and light. The entity's presence surged, its anger and malevolence palpable. "You dare to challenge me?" the entity's voice hissed, filled with fury. "You will regret this." "We will not back down," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. "We will confront you and end this curse." With a final surge of energy, the portal stabilized, revealing a desolate, otherworldly landscape beyond. The entity's form shimmered at the edge of the portal, its eyes burning with rage. "Emma," Alistair said, his voice filled with urgency. "You must enter the portal and find the temporal nexus. Destroy it, and the entity's power will be broken." I nodded, my heart pounding with fear and determination. "I'll do it." As I stepped toward the portal, my mom grabbed my hand, tears streaming down her face. "Please be careful. We love you so much." "I love you too," I said, my voice breaking. "I'll come back, I promise." With a final deep breath, I stepped into the portal, the world around me dissolving into a whirlwind of light and darkness. The sensation was disorienting, like being pulled through a tunnel at breakneck speed. When the world finally solidified around me, I found myself standing in a desolate wasteland, the sky a swirling mass of dark clouds and strange ethereal lights. The air was heavy with a sense of malevolence, the entity's presence pressing down on me from all sides. "Welcome to my realm," the entity's voice echoed, filled with mocking laughter. "You are foolish to think you can defeat me." I ignored its taunts, focusing on the task at hand. I had to find the temporal nexus and destroy it. The landscape was barren, littered with twisted, otherworldly structures that seemed to pulse with dark energy. As I made my way through the wasteland, the entity's presence grew stronger, its form flickering in and out of sight. "You cannot win," it hissed. "Your power is mine. Your soul is mine." "You're wrong," I said, my voice filled with defiance. "I will break this curse." Finally, I reached a massive structure that seemed to radiate with dark energy. The temporal nexus. It was a towering, crystalline monolith, its surface swirling with chaotic temporal energy. I approached the nexus, the entity's form materializing before me, blocking my path. "You will not destroy my power," it snarled, its eyes burning with rage. I steeled myself, drawing on every ounce of courage and determination I had. "I will end this, once and for all." The entity lunged at me, its form shifting and writhing with dark energy. I dodged its attack, feeling the searing heat of its power as it passed by me. I reached out, touching the surface of the temporal nexus, feeling the chaotic energy pulse beneath my fingers. With a final, desperate effort, I channeled all my willpower into a single focused surge of energy. The nexus began to crack, its surface splintering as the temporal energy within it destabilized. "No!" the entity screamed, its form flickering and fading. "You cannot do this!" But it was too late. With a final earth-shattering explosion, the temporal nexus shattered, the chaotic energy dispersing into the air. The entity's form dissolved, its power broken. The world around me began to collapse, the landscape disintegrating into a swirling vortex of light and darkness. I felt myself being pulled back through the portal, the sensation disorienting and overwhelming. When I finally emerged on the other side, I collapsed to the ground, exhausted and trembling. The grove was silent, the oppressive presence of the entity gone. "Emma," my mom cried, rushing to my side and pulling me into a tight embrace. "You're back. You did it." I nodded weakly, tears streaming down my face. "It's over. The curse is broken." Alistair and Professor Vasquez joined us, their faces filled with relief and admiration. "You were incredible, Emma," Alistair said, his voice filled with pride. "You faced the entity and destroyed its power." "We couldn't have done it without you," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "Thank you, Alistair. Thank you, Professor Vasquez." "We're just glad you're safe," Professor Vasquez replied, her eyes twinkling with warmth. As we made our way back home, the first light of dawn breaking through the trees, I felt a profound sense of peace and hope. The nightmare was over, and I was free to live my life without the fear of causing more deaths. With my family by my side and the memory of Alistair's guidance, I knew I could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey to uncover the truth had been long and arduous, but it had taught me the power of love, determination, and the importance of never giving up hope. As we walked into the light of a new day, I felt ready to embrace the future, free at last from the curse that had haunted me for so long. The truth had set me free, and I was determined to make the most of the second chance I had been given. The euphoria of breaking the bond with the entity was intoxicating. For the first time in months, I felt free. No more deaths, no more guilt gnawing at my insides. My family and I spent the following days basking in a sense of normalcy that had been absent for too long. But as the days turned into weeks, a nagging sense of unease began to creep back into my life. The looming threat wasn't gone. It was just biding its time. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I sat on the porch, lost in thought. The cool breeze was a welcome distraction, but it did little to quell the growing anxiety in my chest. "Hey, Emma." Lily's voice broke through my reverie. She approached with a smile, her presence a comforting reminder of normalcy. "Hey, Lily," I replied, forcing a smile. "What's up?" "Just wanted to check on you. You've been through a lot," she said, sitting beside me. "How are you holding up?" I shrugged, looking out at the darkening sky. "Better, I guess. It's just... I don't know. I can't shake the feeling that something bad is going to happen." Lily frowned, her concern evident. "You've been through so much. It's natural to feel on edge. But you defeated that entity, right? You're free." "I thought so," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But it doesn't feel over. It feels like something is still out there, waiting." Before Lily could respond, my phone buzzed with a message. I glanced at the screen, my heart sinking as I read the words. "Emma, we need to talk. Urgent. Meet me at the old library. Alistair." My pulse quickened. "I have to go," I said, standing abruptly. "What's wrong?" Lily asked, her worry deepening. "It's Alistair. He says it's urgent," I explained. "I'll call you later, okay?" Lily nodded, her expression serious. "Be careful, Emma." I hurried to the old library, my mind racing with possibilities. What could be so urgent? Had the entity returned? Was there a new threat? When I arrived, Alistair was waiting at the entrance, his face grim. "Emma," he greeted me, his voice filled with urgency. "We need to talk." "What's going on?" I asked, my anxiety spiking. "Is it the entity?" Alistair shook his head. "No, it's something else. Something worse." A chill ran down my spine. "Worse? What could be worse?" "Come inside," he said, leading me into the library. The musty smell of old books filled the air, the dim lighting casting long shadows on the walls. We sat at a table in a secluded corner. Alistair took a deep breath before speaking. "I've been doing more research since we broke the bond. I've discovered something troubling. The entity you faced was just a harbinger, a servant of a much greater power." My heart pounded in my chest. "A greater power? What do you mean?" "The entity was bound to you, feeding off the chaos and death caused by your power," Alistair explained. "But it was also acting on behalf of a more powerful being, one that seeks to cross into our world and bring about even greater destruction." I felt a wave of nausea. So breaking the bond didn't stop it? "No," Alistair said, his eyes filled with concern. "It merely delayed the inevitable. This greater power is still out there, and it's looking for a new way to enter our realm." I took a shaky breath, trying to process the information. "What can we do? How do we stop it?" "We need to find the source of its power and destroy it," Alistair said. "But first we need to understand what we're dealing with. I've uncovered references to an ancient tome, the Codex Maleficium. It contains information about this greater power and how to combat it." "Where is this codex?" I asked, determination hardening my voice. "It's rumored to be hidden in an old monastery deep in the mountains," Alistair replied. "We'll need to travel there and find it." "Then let's go," I said, my resolve unwavering. "We can't let this thing win." The next morning we set out for the monastery. My parents, though terrified, supported my decision. They knew the stakes were high and that this journey was necessary to protect everyone we loved. The journey was arduous, the winding mountain paths treacherous and steep. Alistair and I traveled by foot, our progress slow but steady. The air grew thinner and colder as we ascended, the landscape growing more rugged and desolate. After several days of grueling travel, we finally reached the monastery. It was an imposing structure built into the side of a cliff, its stone walls weathered by centuries of exposure to the elements. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, the weight of history and secrets pressing down on us. "This is it," Alistair said, his breath visible in the cold air. "The Codex Maleficium should be inside." We entered the monastery, the heavy wooden doors creaking in protest. The interior was dimly lit. the air thick with dust and the scent of aged parchment. We moved cautiously through the labyrinthine halls, our footsteps echoing off the stone walls. As we searched, Alistair explained the significance of the Codex. The Codex Maleficium was written by a group of ancient scholars who dedicated their lives to studying dark forces and how to combat them. It contains powerful spells and rituals, as well as detailed accounts of various malevolent entities. "How do we know it will help us?" I asked, my voice hushed. "We don't," Alistair admitted. "But it's our best chance. If we can find it and decipher its contents, we might be able to find a way to stop this greater power." Hours passed as we scoured the monastery, searching for the hidden chamber where the Codex was rumored to be kept. Finally, in the depths of the monastery's library, we discovered a concealed door behind a row of ancient, dusty tomes. Alistair pushed the door open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. "This must be it," he said, his voice tinged with excitement and apprehension. We descended the staircase, our way lit by the flickering glow of a torch Alistair had brought. At the bottom we found a small, dimly lit chamber. In the center of the room, resting on a stone pedestal, was a large, ancient book bound in dark leather. "The Codex Maleficium," Alistair whispered, reverence in his voice. I approached the pedestal, my heart pounding. As I reached out to touch the book, a low, menacing growl echoed through the chamber. "Do not touch that," a voice hissed, filled with malice. I froze, my hand inches from the Codex. Alistair stepped forward, his face pale. "Who are you?" he demanded. A figure materialized in the shadows, its form shifting and writhing with dark energy. "I am the guardian of the Codex," it said, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "Only those deemed worthy may take it." "We need the Codex to stop a great evil," I said, summoning all my courage. "Please let us take it." The Guardian's eyes narrowed, its form solidifying into a tall, imposing figure. "Many have sought the Codex, but few have proven themselves worthy. To take the Codex, you must pass a trial." "What kind of trial?" Alistair asked warily. The Guardian gestured to the far wall where a large, ornate mirror stood. "You must face your darkest fears and prove your strength and resolve. Only then will you be deemed worthy." I exchanged a nervous glance with Alistair. "I'll do it," I said, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at my insides. The Guardian nodded, its gaze intense. "Step forward and gaze into the mirror. Face your fears and conquer them." I approached the mirror, my heart pounding. As I stared into its reflective surface, the world around me seemed to dissolve, and I found myself standing in a dark, twisted version of my own bedroom. The mirror's surface rippled, and a familiar figure stepped out. It was me, but distorted, her face twisted into a sneer. "You think you can defeat this greater power?" she taunted. "You're weak. You're nothing." I took a deep breath, refusing to let the fear consume me. "I'm not weak," I said firmly. "I've faced my fears before, and I'll do it again." The distorted figure laughed, her eyes gleaming with malice. "You couldn't save Jessica. You couldn't save Michael. How many more will die because of you?" Guilt and sorrow surged within me, but I forced myself to stand tall. "I know I've made mistakes," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. "But I won't let that stop me. I will fight, and I will win." The figure's sneer faltered, her form flickering. "You think you can make a difference? You're just a scared little girl." "I'm not scared anymore," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I have people who believe in me, who stand by me, and I believe in myself." With those words, the distorted figure shattered, the mirror's surface rippling and returning to normal. I found myself back in the chamber, the Guardian's gaze fixed on me. "You have faced your fears and proven your strength," the Guardian said, a note of respect in its voice. "You are worthy. Take the Codex and use its knowledge wisely." I approached the pedestal and carefully lifted the Codex Maleficium. The book was heavy, its leather cover cool and smooth under my fingers. "Thank you," I said, my voice filled with gratitude. The Guardian nodded, its form beginning to dissolve. Remember, the path ahead is fraught with danger, but with courage and determination you can overcome any obstacle. As the Guardian vanished, Alistair stepped forward, his face filled with pride. You did it, Emma. You faced your fears and proved yourself worthy. I smiled, relief and determination flooding through me. We have the Codex. Now we need to figure out how to stop this greater power. Together, we left the monastery, the Codex Maleficium safely in our possession. The journey back down the mountain was arduous, but the weight of the Codex in my pack was a constant reminder of our purpose. When we finally returned home, we immediately set to work deciphering the ancient text. The Codex was filled with spells, rituals, and accounts of powerful entities, but it also contained detailed instructions on how to combat them. After days of intense study, we found what we were looking for: a ritual to banish the greater power back to its realm and seal the portal permanently. This is it, Alistair said, his voice filled with excitement. We can stop it. The ritual required precise timing and powerful ingredients, but we were determined to succeed. With the support of my family and friends, we gathered everything we needed and prepared for the final confrontation. On the night of the ritual, we returned to the grove where we had faced the entity before. The air was thick with tension, the weight of our task pressing down on us. We can do this, I said, my voice filled with determination. We have to. Alistair nodded, his eyes steady. We're ready. We formed a circle, holding hands as Alistair began the incantation. The air crackled with energy, the candles flickering wildly. A low, rumbling growl echoed through the clearing, the ground trembling beneath our feet. The portal began to form in the center of the circle, a swirling vortex of darkness and light. The greater power's presence surged, its anger and malevolence palpable. You cannot defeat me, the greater power's voice hissed, filled with rage. You are nothing. We will banish you, I said, my voice unwavering. You will not harm anyone else. With a final surge of energy, the portal stabilized, revealing the dark, otherworldly landscape beyond. The greater power's form shimmered at the edge of the portal, its eyes burning with rage. Now, Emma, Alistair said, his voice urgent. Complete the ritual. I stepped forward, holding the Codex in one hand and a sacred talisman in the other. I recited the final incantation, the words resonating with a deep, primal power. The greater power screamed in fury, its form flickering and fading. The portal began to collapse, the energy within it destabilizing. No, the greater power shrieked. You cannot banish me! But it was too late. With a final earth-shattering explosion, the portal imploded, the greater power's form dissolving into nothingness. The grove fell silent, the oppressive presence lifting. I collapsed to the ground, exhausted and trembling. It's over, Alistair said softly, his voice filled with awe. You did it, Emma. You banished the greater power. My parents and friends rushed to my side, their faces etched with relief and joy. Emma, you're safe, my mom whispered, hugging me tightly. I nodded weakly, tears streaming down my face. It's over. The threat is gone. As we made our way back home, the first light of dawn breaking through the trees, I felt a profound sense of peace and hope. The nightmare was over, and I was free to live my life without the fear of causing more deaths. With my family by my side and the memory of Alistair's guidance, I knew I could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The looming threat had been vanquished, and I was determined to make the most of the second chance I had been given. As we walked into the light of a new day, I felt ready to embrace the future, free at last from the curse that had haunted me for so long. The threat was gone, and I was finally free to live my life on my own terms. The relief I felt after banishing the greater power was short-lived. Just when I thought the nightmare was over, my sister Lily fell ill with a mysterious ailment. At first, it seemed like a simple cold, but her condition rapidly deteriorated. The doctors were baffled, unable to diagnose her illness or halt its progress. Desperation clawed at me as I realized the true nature of her affliction. The entity wasn't gone. It had left a parting gift, a final curse targeting the person I loved most. I spent days by Lily's side in the hospital, watching her grow weaker with each passing hour. Her pale face and labored breathing haunted my every waking moment. My parents were frantic, but their worry only mirrored my own. I knew this was my fault, a consequence of the entity's lingering influence. One evening, as I sat by Lily's bed, her breathing shallow and erratic, I felt a presence behind me. I turned to see Alistair standing in the doorway, his expression grave. "Emma," he said softly, "we need to talk." I nodded, rising to meet him in the hallway. "It's the entity, isn't it? It's still affecting her." Alistair sighed, rubbing his temples. "I believe so. The greater power may be banished, but its lingering influence is still present. We need to act quickly if we're going to save Lily." "What can we do?" I asked, my voice trembling with fear and determination. "We need to perform a cleansing ritual to remove the entity's influence from her," Alistair explained. "But it's not going to be easy. We need specific ingredients and must conduct the ritual at the exact moment when the veil between our world and the spiritual realm is thinnest." "When is that?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Midnight tonight," Alistair said. "We don't have much time." "We'll need to gather everything quickly," I said, my mind racing. "What do we need?" Alistair handed me a list of ingredients: sacred herbs, a silver chalice, a crystal, and a mirror. "I'll gather the herbs and chalice. You find the crystal and mirror. We meet back here in 2 hours." I nodded, determination hardening my resolve. "Let's do this." I rushed to the local metaphysical store, hoping they had what I needed. The store was a small, dimly lit space filled with the scent of incense and the sound of wind chimes. The shelves were lined with crystals, herbs, and mystical artifacts. "Can I help you?" the shopkeeper asked, her eyes warm and knowing. "I need a clear quartz crystal and a small mirror," I said urgently. "It's for a cleansing ritual." The shopkeeper's expression shifted to one of understanding. "Ah, a cleansing ritual. I have just what you need." She led me to a display of crystals and selected a clear quartz, its facets catching the light. Then she handed me a small ornate mirror. "These should do the trick." "Thank you," I said, paying for the items. "This means a lot." She smiled gently. "Good luck. May your intentions be pure and your heart strong." I rushed back to the hospital, clutching the crystal and mirror tightly. Alistair was already there, holding the chalice and herbs. "We have everything," he said, relief in his voice. "Let's set up the ritual." We found a quiet, secluded room in the hospital where we could conduct the ritual undisturbed. Alistair arranged the items in a circle, placing the chalice in the center. "Emma," he said, his voice serious, "you'll need to lead the ritual. Your connection to Lily is what will drive the entity out." I took a deep breath, nodding. "Okay. Tell me what to do." Alistair guided me through the steps. "Light the herbs and place the crystal in the chalice. Hold the mirror so it reflects the moonlight and focus on your love for Lily. Repeat after me." He began to chant in a language I didn't understand, and I repeated his words, my voice trembling but growing stronger with each repetition. The air in the room grew colder, the candles flickering as the ritual progressed. "Lily, my sister, my blood," I intoned, holding the mirror aloft. "By the light of the moon and the strength of our bond, I call upon the spirits to cleanse you. Release her from the entity's grip and restore her health." The herbs burned brighter, their smoke swirling around the chalice. The crystal inside began to glow, a pure white light emanating from its core. The room seemed to pulse with energy, the veil between our world and the spiritual realm thinning. Suddenly, Lily's body convulsed on the bed, her eyes fluttering open. She gasped, her breathing ragged. "Emma." "I'm here, Lily," I said, tears streaming down my face. We're going to make you better." The entity's presence surged, a dark, malevolent force resisting the cleansing ritual. The air crackled with tension, the energy in the room growing more intense. "Keep going, Emma," Alistair urged. "Don't stop." I focused all my love and determination on Lily, pouring my heart into the ritual. By the power of the sacred herbs, the light of the crystal, and the reflection of the mirror, I command the entity to release my sister. A piercing scream echoed through the room as the entity's presence was driven back. The candles flared, their flames turning blue. The crystal in the chalice pulsed with light, growing brighter and brighter until it was almost blinding. With a final, earth-shattering cry, the entity's presence shattered, the room returning to normal. The candles flickered out and the air grew still. Lily's body relaxed, her breathing evening out. Her eyes closed, and she slipped into a peaceful sleep. "Is it over?" I asked, my voice trembling with exhaustion and relief. Alistair nodded, his expression one of awe and pride. "Yes, Emma, you did it. The entity's influence is gone." I collapsed to the floor, tears of relief streaming down my face. "Thank you, Alistair. I couldn't have done it without you." "You had the strength within you all along," he said gently. "I was merely a guide." We returned to Lily's room, where my parents were waiting anxiously. When they saw Lily sleeping peacefully, their faces lit up with joy and relief. "She's going to be okay," I said, hugging them tightly. "The entity's influence is gone." My mom's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, thank God. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Alistair." My dad squeezed my shoulder, his voice choked with emotion. "You saved her, Emma. We're so proud of you." The next morning, Lily woke up, her strength slowly returning. The color came back to her cheeks, and her eyes sparkled with life once more. "Hey, sleepyhead," I said, smiling down at her. "How do you feel?" Lily yawned, stretching her arms. "Tired, but better." "What happened?" "It's a long story," I said, tears of relief and joy in my eyes. "But the important thing is that you're going to be okay." As Lily recovered, the weight of the past few months began to lift. The entity was gone, and my sister was safe. The nightmare was finally over. But the experience had changed me. I realized that my power, though dangerous, could also be a force for good if used wisely. I was determined to learn more about it, to understand its limits and potential. With Alistair's guidance, I began to study the ancient texts and grimoires, seeking knowledge about my abilities and how to control them. I trained to strengthen my will and focus, learning to channel my power safely. One evening, as I practiced in the grove where we had conducted the rituals, Alistair approached me, his expression thoughtful. "Emma," he said, "you have a rare gift. Your power, though dangerous, can also be a force for good. With proper training and understanding, you can use it to help others." I looked at him, determination in my eyes. "I want to learn. I want to make sure nothing like this ever happens again." Alistair smiled, a glint of pride in his eyes. "Then let's begin." As we trained, I felt a sense of purpose and hope. The journey had been long and arduous, but it had taught me the power of love, determination, and the importance of never giving up hope. With my family and friends by my side and Alistair's guidance, I knew I could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The race against time had been won, and I was determined to make the most of the second chance I had been given. As we walked into the light of a new day, I felt ready to embrace the future, free at last from the curse that had haunted me for so long. The threat was gone, and I was finally free to live my life on my own terms, using my power to protect and heal rather than harm. The weeks following the cleansing ritual were a blur of relief and cautious optimism. Lily recovered swiftly, her laughter once again filling our home. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to believe that things might actually return to normal. But the respite was brief. The lingering shadow of the entity's final words haunted me. The price is high. Are you prepared to pay it? One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, Alistair approached with a grave expression. Emma, we need to talk, he said, his voice heavy with unspoken concerns. I looked up, dread curling in my stomach. What is it, Alistair? He sat beside me, his eyes reflecting the fading light. I've been doing more research trying to understand the nature of the power that targeted you and your family. What I found is troubling. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding. Troubling how? Alistair sighed deeply. The entity you faced was indeed powerful, but it wasn't the end of the danger. There's a prophecy I came across, an ancient text that speaks of a balance that must be maintained. The entity's defeat disrupted that balance. The only way to restore it is through a significant sacrifice. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of sacrifice? Alistair hesitated, his gaze fixed on the horizon. A life freely given, a life to balance the scales. My breath caught in my throat. You mean someone has to die? Yes, he said softly. And it has to be someone with a strong connection to the entity, someone whose actions disrupted the balance in the first place. I felt as though the ground had shifted beneath me. That means me. Alistair's eyes were filled with sorrow. I'm afraid so, Emma. You've been the focal point of these events. Your sacrifice could restore the balance and ensure the safety of everyone you love. Tears welled in my eyes as the weight of his words settled over me. There has to be another way, I whispered, my voice trembling. I wish there were, Alistair said, his voice breaking. But the texts are clear. The balance must be restored or the danger will continue to grow. I stood abruptly, pacing the porch as panic surged within me. I can't leave my family. I can't leave Lily. Emma, Alistair said gently. Your family would never want you to sacrifice yourself. But if the balance isn't restored, they could be in even greater danger. It's a terrible choice, but it's one only you can make. I turned to face him, tears streaming down my face. How do I tell them? How do I explain that I have to die to save them? We'll figure it out together, Alistair said, standing and placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. But you don't have to make this decision right now. Take some time to think about it and know that whatever you choose, I'm here for you. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as the weight of the decision pressed down on me. Memories of my family, my friends, and the life I had fought so hard to protect swirled in my mind. How could I leave them? How could I make such a terrible choice? The next morning, I found my parents in the kitchen, their faces filled with concern as they watched the news. I took a deep breath and joined them, knowing I couldn't keep this from them any longer. Mom, Dad, I began, my voice trembling. I need to talk to you about something important. They turned to me, their expressions wary. What is it, Emma? My mom asked, her voice filled with worry. I took another deep breath, steadying myself. I've been talking to Alistair and we found something troubling. The entity's defeat disrupted a balance and the only way to restore it is through a significant sacrifice. My dad's face paled. What do you mean, significant sacrifice? A life freely given, I said, my voice breaking. My life. My mom's eyes filled with tears as she reached out to grasp my hand. No, Emma, there has to be another way. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. The texts are clear, Mom. If we don't restore the balance, the danger will continue to grow. I can't let that happen. My dad stood, his expression one of fierce determination. We'll find another way. We won't let you sacrifice yourself. Please, I said, my voice trembling. I need you to understand. This isn't about what I want. It's about protecting all of you. My mom pulled me into a tight embrace, her tears soaking into my shirt. We can't lose you, Emma. You're our daughter. I know, I whispered, my heart breaking. but I can't let you suffer because of me. For the next few days, I wrestled with the decision, torn between my love for my family and my sense of duty. Alistair continued to support me, offering guidance and reassurance as I grappled with the terrible choice before me. One evening, as I sat alone in the grove where we had performed the rituals, Lily found me. She approached quietly, her face pale and her eyes filled with worry. "Emma," she said softly, sitting beside me, "I heard what you told Mom and Dad." My heart ached as I looked at her. "Lily, I'm so sorry." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Don't be sorry. Just tell me it's not true. Tell me you don't have to die." "I wish I could," I said, my voice breaking. "But it's the only way to restore the balance and keep you safe." Lily threw her arms around me, sobbing into my shoulder. "I can't lose you, Emma. You're my sister, my best friend." I held her tightly, my own tears falling. "I know, Lily. I don't want to leave you, but if it means protecting you, I have to do it." For a long time we sat there holding each other and crying. The sun set, casting long shadows over the grove as the weight of our grief settled around us. The next morning I made my decision. I couldn't let the danger continue to grow, threatening everyone I loved. I would make the sacrifice, no matter how much it hurt. I gathered my family and friends, including Alistair, and explained my decision. Their faces were filled with anguish, but they understood the gravity of the situation. "We'll do this together," Alistair said, his voice filled with resolve. "We'll make sure your sacrifice isn't in vain." The night of the ritual arrived, and we gathered in the grove once more. The full moon cast an ethereal glow over the clearing, the air heavy with tension and sorrow. Alistair prepared the ritual, his movements precise and deliberate. My parents, Lily, and my closest friends stood around me, their faces etched with grief. "Are you ready?" Alistair asked, his voice gentle. I nodded, my heart pounding. "Yes." We formed a circle holding hands as Alistair began the incantation. The air crackled with energy, the candles flickering wildly. A low, rumbling growl echoed through the clearing, the ground trembling beneath our feet. "Emma, my dear friend," Alistair said, his voice breaking, "you are about to embark on the most selfless act of love. Your sacrifice will restore the balance and protect those you hold dear." Tears streamed down my face as I looked at my family and friends, their faces filled with sorrow and love. "I love you all," I said, my voice trembling. "Thank you for everything." As the ritual reached its climax, I felt a surge of energy course through me. The air grew colder, the candles flaring with an intense light. The ground beneath me seemed to shift, the veil between our world and the spiritual realm thinning. With a final, heart-wrenching cry, I felt my life force begin to drain away. The world around me grew dim, the sounds of my loved ones' sobs fading into the distance. "Emma," Alistair's voice called out, filled with anguish. "Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. You will be remembered as a beacon of hope and love." As the last of my strength ebbed away, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The balance was being restored, and my family would be safe. In those final moments, I closed my eyes, my heart filled with love and gratitude. The terrible choice had been made, and the price had been paid. As I drifted into the darkness, I knew that my sacrifice had not been in vain. My family and friends would live on, their lives free from the shadow of the entity, and in that knowledge, I found solace. The world grew silent, and I embraced the peace that came with my final act of love. The knowledge that my sister Lily was safe should have brought me solace, but instead, it filled me with dread. Despite the temporary reprieve, the sense of impending doom was palpable. I knew I couldn't escape my fate. The balance had to be restored. The only question was when and how. The final moment came unexpectedly, in the dead of night. I was jolted awake by the sound of Lily's pained cries, Panic surged through me as I rushed to her room, finding her curled up in bed, clutching her stomach and sobbing. "Lily, what's wrong?" I asked, my voice trembling with fear. "It hurts, Emma," she whimpered. "It hurts so much." I felt a surge of desperation. I couldn't lose her, not after everything we had been through. I had to do something, anything, to save her. The only option left was to use my power one last time, to freeze time and get her to the hospital. But I knew the cost. Each time I used my power, someone close to me died. The guilt of past deaths weighed heavily on me, but I couldn't let Lily die. I had to take the risk. "Hang on, Lily," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I'm going to help you." I focused on the familiar sensation of stopping time, feeling the world around me freeze. The sound of Lily's cries ceased, replaced by an eerie silence. My heart pounded in my chest as I scooped her into my arms, her body feeling unnaturally light and still. I rushed out of the house and into the night, the world frozen in a surreal tableau. Every second counted, and I couldn't afford to waste any time. The hospital was only a few blocks away, but it felt like an eternity. As I entered the emergency room, I felt the strain of holding time at bay. My vision blurred, and I knew I couldn't maintain the freeze much longer. I gently placed Lily on a stretcher, praying that the doctors would be able to save her. With a final push of my will, I released my hold on time, feeling it snap back into motion. The sudden rush of sound and movement was disorienting, but I forced myself to stay focused. "Help! Someone please help my sister!" I screamed, my voice raw with desperation. Doctors and nurses rushed to our side, their faces filled with concern and urgency. They quickly assessed Lily's condition, and within moments she was whisked away to the operating room. I collapsed onto a nearby bench, my body trembling with exhaustion and fear. The waiting room was a blur of activity, but I felt completely alone. The weight of what I had done pressed down on me, the knowledge that my use of power would come at a terrible cost. Hours passed in agonizing silence. My parents arrived, their faces pale and drawn with worry. We clung to each other, praying for Lily's recovery. The minutes stretched into hours, and each tick of the clock felt like a countdown to an unknown fate. Finally, a doctor emerged from the operating room, his expression grave. "Your sister is stable," he said, his voice measured. "But we need to keep her under observation. It was a close call." Relief flooded through me, but it was quickly overshadowed by dread. I knew the cost of my actions, and I braced myself for the inevitable news. As we sat in the waiting room, my phone buzzed with a message. My heart sank as I read the words. "Emma, meet me in the Grove. Urgent. Alistair." I stood, my legs shaking. "I need to go," I said to my parents. "I'll be back soon." "Where are you going?" my mom asked, her voice filled with concern. "I need to meet Alistair. It's important," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. They nodded, their worry evident, but they didn't press further. I left the hospital and made my way to the Grove, the weight of the impending news pressing down on me with every step. Alistair was waiting for me, his face etched with sorrow. "Emma," he said softly. "I'm so sorry." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Who was it, Alistair? Who did I lose this time?" He took a deep breath, his voice trembling. "It was your mom, Emma. She collapsed shortly after you left. The doctors couldn't save her." The world seemed to tilt on its axis, and I felt as though I was falling into an abyss. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, this can't be happening." "I'm so sorry," Alistair repeated, his eyes filled with pain. "The balance demanded a life, and it took your mom." I collapsed to the ground, sobs racking my body. The guilt and grief were overwhelming, threatening to consume me. "This is all my fault," I cried. "I used my power, and now my mom is dead." Alistair knelt beside me, his voice gentle. "You did what you had to do to save Lily. Your mom would have wanted you to protect your sister." "But at what cost?" I choked out. "How can I live with myself, knowing that my actions caused her death?" "You have to find a way to forgive yourself, Emma," Alistair said softly. Your mom loved you, and she wouldn't want you to be consumed by guilt. You have to honor her memory by living your life and protecting those you love. I looked up at him, my vision blurred by tears. How do I do that, Alistair? How do I move forward from this? One step at a time, he replied. You have the strength within you, Emma, and you have people who care about you. Lean on them and let them help you heal. In the days that followed, I struggled to come to terms with my mom's death. The house felt emptier without her presence, and the weight of guilt and grief was a constant companion, but I knew I had to be strong for Lily and my dad. One evening, as I sat by Lily's bedside, she reached out and took my hand. Emma, she said softly, her voice weak but steady. Mom wouldn't want you to blame yourself. She loved you so much, and she knew you were doing your best to protect us. Tears streamed down my face as I squeezed her hand. I miss her so much, Lily. I miss her too, Lily replied, her eyes filled with sorrow. But we have to keep going, for her sake. We have to honor her memory by living our lives and taking care of each other. I'll always be here for you, Lily, I said, my voice trembling. We'll get through this together. As the weeks turned into months, I slowly began to find a sense of peace. The pain of losing my mom never truly went away, but I learned to carry it with me, to let it shape me rather than consume me. I focused on my studies, on spending time with my family and friends, and on learning to control my power. One afternoon, as Alistair and I trained in the grove, he looked at me with a mixture of pride and sadness. You've come a long way, Emma, he said. Your mom would be so proud of you. Thank you, Alistair, I replied, my voice filled with gratitude. I couldn't have done it without your help. You have the strength within you, he said, smiling. Never forget that. As we continued our training, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey had been filled with pain and loss, but it had also taught me the power of love, resilience, and determination. I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I could face them with the support of those I loved. And so, I embraced the future, ready to live my life to the fullest and to honor my mom's memory by protecting those I held dear. The balance had been restored, and though the cost had been high, I knew that I had the strength to move forward and to make the most of the second chance I had been given. The days following my mother's death were some of the hardest of my life. The house felt hollow without her, and every corner seemed to echo with memories of her laughter and love. My sister Lily was recovering physically, but the emotional toll on her was evident. My father was a shadow of his former self, lost in his grief, and I carried the unbearable weight of knowing my actions had indirectly led to her death. It was late one night when Alistair called me, his voice urgent. Emma, I need you to meet me at the old library. There's something you need to see. Fear gripped me, but I agreed, knowing that whatever Alistair had discovered could be crucial. The library, now a familiar place of secrets and revelations, loomed ahead as I approached. Alistair was waiting at the entrance, his face etched with concern. What's going on? I asked, my voice trembling. There's something I need to show you, he replied, leading me inside. We made our way to the back of the library where Alistair had set up a table covered in ancient texts and scrolls. He pointed to an open book, its pages filled with intricate symbols and writing. This is the Codex Maleficium, Alistair explained. I've been studying it since the cleansing ritual. I found a passage that speaks of a final, ultimate sacrifice that can restore balance and permanently banish the entity's influence. I felt a chill run down my spine. What kind of sacrifice? Alistair's eyes met mine, filled with sorrow. A life freely given by someone with the power to manipulate time. Your life, Emma. The weight of his words settled over me like a suffocating blanket. I thought we had already restored the balance, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We did temporarily, Alistair replied. But the entity's influence is still present, and it will continue to cause harm unless we take this final step. I sank into a chair, my mind racing. I can't leave my family, Alistair. I can't leave Lily and my dad. I know, he said gently. But this is the only way to ensure their safety and to prevent the entity from causing more harm. Tears welled up in my eyes as I struggled to process the enormity of the decision before me. How do I even begin to tell them? Alistair placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. We'll figure it out together. You're not alone in this, Emma. The next few days were a blur of heartache and preparation. Alistair and I worked tirelessly to decipher the ritual and gather the necessary components. The more we delved into the texts, the more I understood the gravity of the sacrifice I was about to make. One evening, as I sat in the living room with Lily and my dad, I knew it was time to tell them the truth. My heart ached at the thought of leaving them, but I couldn't let the entity continue to wreak havoc on our lives. Dad, Lily, I began, my voice trembling. There's something I need to tell you. They both turned to me, their expressions filled with concern. What is it, Emma? My dad asked. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I've been talking to Alistair, and we've discovered that the entity's influence is still present. The only way to permanently banish it and restore balance is through a final sacrifice. My sacrifice. Lily, arranging the components in a precise circle. My family and friends stood around me, their faces etched with grief and love. Are you ready? Alistair asked, his voice gentle. I nodded, my heart pounding. Yes? We formed a circle, holding hands as Alistair began the incantation. The air crackled with energy, the candles flickering wildly. A low, rumbling growl echoed through the clearing, the ground trembling beneath our feet. Emma, Alistair said, his voice breaking. You are about to make the ultimate sacrifice. Your selflessness will restore balance and protect those you love. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at my family and friends, their faces filled with sorrow and love. I love you all, I said, my voice trembling. Thank you for everything. As the ritual reached its climax, I felt a surge of energy course through me. The air grew colder, the candles flaring with an intense light. The ground beneath me seemed to shift, the veil between our world and the spiritual realm thinning. With a final heart-wrenching cry, I felt my life force begin to drain away. The world around me grew dim, the sounds of my loved one's sobs fading into the distance. Emma, Alistair's voice called out, filled with anguish. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. You will be remembered as a beacon of hope and love. As the last of my strength ebbed away, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The balance was being restored, and my family would be safe. In those final moments, I closed my eyes, my heart filled with love and gratitude. The ultimate sacrifice had been made, and the price had been paid. As I drifted into the darkness, I knew that my sacrifice had not been in vain. My family and friends would live on, their lives free from the shadow of the entity. And in that knowledge I found solace. The world grew silent, and I embraced the peace that came with my final act of love. The ultimate sacrifice had restored balance, and I was finally free to rest. The days after my death were filled with mourning, but also with a profound sense of peace. My family and friends knew that my sacrifice had saved them, and that knowledge gave them the strength to move forward. Lily recovered fully, her strength and spirit returning. She carried my memory with her, honoring me by living her life to the fullest. My dad found solace in knowing that I had protected our family, and he took comfort in the love and support of our community. Alistair continued his work, using the knowledge he had gained to help others facing similar threats. He never forgot the bravery and selflessness of the girl who had made the ultimate sacrifice to protect those she loved. As time passed, the pain of my loss gradually gave way to a sense of hope and renewal. My family and friends found ways to honor my memory, celebrating the love and courage that had defined my final act. In the end, my sacrifice had not only restored balance, but had also brought my loved ones closer together. They found strength in each other, and in the knowledge that love and selflessness could overcome even the darkest of threats. The ultimate sacrifice had been made, and the price had been paid. My family and friends would live on, their lives free from the shadow of the entity. And in that knowledge, I found peace. Through my sister's tearful recounting, I learned of my own mysterious death. The official report cited natural causes, but she and I knew the terrifying truth. I had made the ultimate sacrifice to save her, and now I was gone. Yet, the love I had for my family and friends transcended death, and I became a silent observer in their lives, watching over them from beyond. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. My family struggled with their grief, each coping in their own way. My father threw himself into work, trying to keep himself busy and avoid the painful emptiness left by my absence. Lily, on the other hand, found solace in the small things, like tending to the garden I had loved so much and rereading my favorite books. One evening, as the sun set, casting a golden hue over the living room, Lily sat with our father. The silence between them was heavy, laden with unspoken words and shared sorrow. Finally, Lily broke the silence. "Dad, I miss her so much," she said, her voice trembling. "Sometimes it feels like she's still here watching over us." My father looked up from his work, his eyes red-rimmed. "I know, sweetheart. I feel it too. It's like she left a part of herself behind." Lily nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "Do you think she knows how much we love her?" "I'm sure she does," he replied, his voice breaking. "Emma sacrificed herself to protect us. That's the greatest act of love anyone could show." The conversation brought a sense of comfort to both of them, and I felt a surge of warmth knowing that my family was finding ways to cope with their grief. Yet, I wished there was more I could do to help them heal. As time went on, I watched over them, finding solace in their gradual healing. Lily began to smile more often, and my father found moments of peace amidst his work. My presence was felt in small ways. Lily's uncanny ability to find lost items, the inexplicable feeling of warmth on a cold day, and the dreams where they felt my comforting embrace. One night, as Lily lay in bed, she whispered into the darkness, "Emma, if you can hear me, please give me a sign. I need to know you're still with us." Moved by her plea, I concentrated with all my might. A gentle breeze stirred the curtains, and the scent of lavender, my favorite flower, filled the room. Lily's eyes widened and a small smile touched her lips. "Thank you, Emma," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "I love you." I continued to watch over my family, guiding them through their grief. One evening, as the moon cast a silvery light over our home, Alistair visited. His presence was a welcome comfort, as he had become a trusted friend and mentor to Lily and my father. "Lily, Robert," Alistair began, his voice gentle. "I know how hard this has been for both of you. Emma's sacrifice was immense, but she did it out of love. She wouldn't want you to be consumed by grief." Lily nodded, her eyes shining with tears. "I know, Alistair, but it's hard. I miss her every day." Alistair took her hand, his expression compassionate. "She loved you more than anything, and her spirit is still with you, guiding and protecting you. Honor her memory by living your life fully, just as she would have wanted." My father, who had been silent, finally spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "You're right, Alistair. Emma was the bravest person I've ever known. We need to carry on her legacy." Over the following months, Lily found new ways to honor my memory. She joined a volunteer organization that helped children in need, inspired by my desire to make a positive impact on the world. My father began mentoring young engineers, sharing his knowledge and experience, just as I had once looked up to him for guidance. One sunny afternoon, Lily visited my grave, a bouquet of lavender in her hands. She knelt beside the headstone, her voice soft and filled with love. "Emma, I wanted to thank you," she said, placing the flowers gently on the ground. "Your sacrifice gave me the strength to carry on. I promised to live my life in a way that would make you proud." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and Lily closed her eyes, feeling my presence beside her. "I miss you every day," she whispered, "but I know you're always with me." The seasons changed, and with each passing day, my family grew stronger. They found joy in new experiences and solace in each other's company. Though the pain of my loss never fully disappeared, it became a part of them, shaping their lives in meaningful ways. One evening, as the first snowfall of winter blanketed the ground, Lily sat by the fireplace, a journal in her hands. She had started writing letters to me, a way to stay connected and share her thoughts. "Dear Emma," she wrote, her handwriting neat and deliberate. "Today, I helped a little girl learn to read. She reminded me so much of you when we were kids. She was so determined, just like you always were. I think you would have liked her." As she wrote, a sense of peace settled over her. She knew that I was still with her, guiding her through life's challenges and celebrating her successes. On the anniversary of my death, my family and friends gathered at the grove where we had performed the rituals. It had become a place of reflection and remembrance, a sacred space where they could feel my presence. Alistair led the gathering, his voice steady and filled with reverence. "We are here today to honor Emma's memory and the incredible sacrifice she made to protect us all. Her spirit lives on in each of us, and her love continues to guide us." Lily stepped forward, her eyes bright with emotion. "Emma taught me the true meaning of love and sacrifice. She showed me that even in the darkest moments, there's always hope. Today we celebrate her life and the legacy she left behind." As they shared stories and memories, a sense of unity and love enveloped them. The pain of my loss was still there, but it was tempered by the knowledge that my sacrifice had brought them closer together and given them the strength to carry on. That night, as they sat around a bonfire, Alistair spoke softly to Lily. "You've grown so much, Lily. Your sister would be incredibly proud of you." Lily smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I owe it all to her, Alistair. She gave me the courage to face my fears and the strength to keep going. She lives on through you," Alistair said, his voice filled with warmth, "and through all the lives you touch." As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled above, I felt a profound sense of peace. My family and friends had found a way to honor my memory and carry on my legacy. Though I was no longer with them in body, my spirit continued to guide and protect them. In the years that followed, Lily graduated from college and pursued a career in social work, dedicating her life to helping others. My father found happiness again, eventually remarrying and welcoming new family members into our lives. They continued to honor my memory, finding strength in the love and sacrifices that had defined our bond. On special occasions, they would visit the grove, lighting candles and sharing stories. It had become a tradition, a way to keep my spirit alive and celebrate the love that had bound us together. One summer evening, as the sun set over the grove, Lily sat with her own daughter, Emma, named in my honor. The little girl listened intently as Lily shared stories of our childhood and the incredible sacrifice that had saved their family. "Your Aunt Emma was the bravest person I've ever known," Lily said, her voice filled with pride. "She taught me that love is the most powerful force in the world, and that even in the darkest times, we can find light and hope." Young Emma looked up at her mother, her eyes wide with wonder. "I want to be brave like Aunt Emma." "You already are," Lily replied, hugging her daughter tightly. "And I know she's watching over us, guiding us with her love." As the stars began to twinkle in the sky, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. My family had found a way to carry on, to honor my memory, and to live their lives with courage and love. Though I was no longer with them in body, my spirit remained, a constant presence in their hearts and lives. In the end, the ultimate sacrifice had brought us closer together, strengthening the bonds of love and resilience that defined our family. And as they continued to grow and thrive, I knew that my legacy would live on, a testament to the power of love and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Even as my sacrifice broke the cycle, questions remained. Why was I chosen? What other dark forces lurk just beyond our perception, waiting to prey on the unsuspecting? Months had passed since my ultimate sacrifice, and life for my family was beginning to return to a semblance of normalcy. Lily was recovering well, our father was slowly finding his way out of the fog of grief, and Alistair continued to offer his support. Yet, the questions that haunted me in life persisted in death, and I found myself desperate for answers. One evening, as the twilight settled over our home, Lily sat in her room, the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminating her face. She had taken up journaling, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Her pen moved across the page, but her eyes were distant, filled with unspoken questions. "Dad, can we talk?" she called out, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Our father appeared in the doorway, his expression gentle yet weary. "Of course, Lily. What's on your mind?" Lily hesitated, then closed her journal and looked up at him. "I've been thinking a lot about Emma and everything that happened. There are so many things that don't make sense. Why her? Why us?" He sighed deeply, stepping into the room and sitting on the edge of her bed. "I wish I had answers for you, Lily. Your sister's sacrifice was beyond anything I could ever comprehend, but some things I think are just meant to remain mysteries." "But that's not good enough," Lily said, frustration and sadness mixing in her voice. "I need to understand. I need to know why she had to go through all of that." Our father looked at her with compassion. "I understand, sweetheart. Maybe Alistair can help. He's studied these things far more than any of us." The next day, Lily and our father met with Alistair in his study. The room was filled with ancient books and mystical artifacts, a testament to his lifelong quest for knowledge about the supernatural. "Lily, Robert," Alistair greeted them warmly, gesturing for them to sit. "What brings you here today?" Lily took a deep breath, her resolve evident. "Alistair, I need answers. Why was Emma chosen? What dark forces are out there? I can't move on until I know." Alistair nodded, his expression serious. "I've been asking myself the same questions. Emma's power to stop time was unique, and her sacrifice was monumental. To understand why she was chosen, we need to delve into the ancient texts and histories of our world." He reached for a large, leather-bound book and opened it to a page marked with an ornate ribbon. "This is the Grimoire of Eternus, a compendium of knowledge about time manipulation and the entities that govern our existence. According to this, those with the power to manipulate time are rare, often chosen by fate for reasons we may never fully understand." "But why Emma?" Lily pressed, her eyes searching Alistair's. "Why our family?" Alistair's gaze softened. "Sometimes, it's not about the individual but the circumstances. Emma's compassion, her strength, her willingness to sacrifice herself. These are qualities that made her a beacon in the battle against darkness. The entity that targeted her was drawn to her power but also to her light." Lily absorbed his words, a mixture of frustration and understanding crossing her face. "So she was chosen because she was strong enough to face it?" "Yes," Alistair replied. "And because she had the capacity to love and protect those around her, even at great personal cost." Our father, who had been silent, finally spoke. "But what about the other dark forces out there? Are we still in danger?" Alistair's expression grew more somber. The entity Emma faced was one of many. There are countless dark forces that exist just beyond our perception, always searching for a way into our world. Some are ancient, others new, but all are dangerous. Lily shivered. "How do we protect ourselves?" "Knowledge and vigilance," Alistair said firmly. "Understanding these forces and recognizing the signs of their presence is crucial, and never underestimate the power of love and unity. These dark entities thrive on fear and division." As the conversation continued, Alistair shared more about his studies and the various entities that lurked in the shadows. Lily and our father listened intently, absorbing the information and feeling a sense of empowerment amidst the fear. That evening, as Lily lay in bed, her mind churned with all she had learned. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, to honor Emma's sacrifice by protecting others and seeking answers to the mysteries that still lingered. A few days later, Lily found herself in the old library once again, searching for more clues about the entity and its origins. She combed through ancient texts, her determination unwavering. As she read, a passage caught her eye. The chosen ones, bearers of the power to manipulate time, are marked by fate. Their lineage is often steeped in mysticism, their ancestors having encountered the supernatural in various forms. Lily's heart raced. Could our family's history hold the key to understanding why Emma was chosen? She decided to dig deeper, researching our family tree and any connections to the mystical or supernatural. Late one night, as Lily pored over old family records and historical documents, she discovered something startling. Our great-great-grandmother, Eliza, had been a renowned mystic in her time, known for her ability to commune with spirits and foresee future events. She had written extensively about her encounters with dark forces and her efforts to protect her family from them. "Lily, what are you doing up so late?" our father asked, entering the room with a concerned expression. "I found something," Lily replied, her eyes wide with excitement and fear. Great-great-grandmother Eliza was a mystic. She faced dark forces too. This might be why Emma was chosen. Our father's eyes widened in surprise. Eliza. I remember hearing stories about her when I was a child, but I never knew the full extent of her abilities. She wrote about protecting our family from dark entities, Lily explained, showing him the documents she had found. It's possible that Emma inherited her powers from Eliza. The discovery brought a mix of emotions, relief at finally having some answers and fear of the implications, but it also gave them a sense of purpose. Understanding their family's history could help them protect themselves and others from future threats. Lily and our father continued their research, often consulting with Alistair. They discovered that Eliza had left behind a series of journals detailing her encounters with the supernatural and the protective rituals she had performed to keep her family safe. One evening, as they gathered in the study, Alistair read aloud from one of Eliza's journals. "The forces of darkness are relentless, always seeking a way into our world. But with knowledge, courage, and love, we can stand against them. Our family is marked by fate, but we are also blessed with the strength to protect one another." Lily felt a surge of pride and determination. Eliza knew the dangers, but she also knew how to fight them. "We have to continue her legacy." Our father nodded, his expression resolute. "We'll do whatever it takes to keep our family safe. Emma's sacrifice gave us a second chance, and we won't waste it." As they delved deeper into Eliza's writings, they learned about various protective rituals and symbols. They began incorporating these practices into their daily lives, creating an atmosphere of vigilance and preparedness. One night, as Lily performed a protection ritual in the grove, she felt a sense of peace and connection to her ancestors. She knew that Emma was watching over them, guiding them from beyond. "Lily, you've grown so strong," Alistair said, observing her ritual with admiration. "Your sister would be incredibly proud of you." "Thank you, Alistair," Lily replied, her voice filled with determination. "I'm doing this for Emma and for our family. We won't let the darkness win." Months turned into years, and Lily's dedication to protecting her family and seeking answers never wavered. She continued to study the supernatural, often collaborating with Alistair on research and investigations. Together they faced new challenges and threats, always remembering the lessons they had learned from Emma's sacrifice. One evening, as they sat in the study, Alistair shared some news. "Lily, I've been contacted by a group of scholars who specialize in time manipulation and the supernatural. They're interested in our family's history and want to collaborate with us." Lily's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's amazing, Alistair. This could be a great opportunity to learn more and find new ways to protect ourselves. Their collaboration with the scholars opened new doors, leading to breakthroughs in their understanding of the supernatural and time manipulation. They discovered that there were others like Emma, individuals marked by fate with unique abilities. These chosen ones were scattered across the world, each facing their own battles against darkness. Lily found solace in connecting with others who shared her experiences, forming a network of support and knowledge. She knew that Emma's sacrifice had not only saved their family, but had also paved the way for a greater understanding of the supernatural. One night, as Lily sat by the fireplace reading one of Eliza's journals, she felt a gentle presence beside her. She closed her eyes, a sense of warmth and love enveloping her. "Emma, I know you're here," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you for everything. Your sacrifice wasn't in vain. We're carrying on your legacy and protecting those we love." As the fire crackled and the night deepened, Lily felt a profound sense of peace. The lingering questions had led her on a journey of discovery, revealing the strength and resilience of her family. Emma's spirit continued to guide them, a beacon of love and hope in the face of darkness. And though the questions would never fully disappear, Lily knew that she had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With her family, Alistair, and their newfound allies, they stood united against the forces of darkness, ready to protect their world and honor the legacy of the one they had lost. If you're reading this, know that some powers are not meant for mortals. Beware the temptation of playing God, for the price may be more than you can bear. The darkness is always watching, always waiting for its next victim. The warning came in the form of a dream, but it felt as real as any waking moment. I found myself standing in a vast, dark expanse, the only light emanating from a distant flickering source. I moved towards it, the silence around me oppressive. As I approached, I saw a figure standing by a large, ornate mirror. "Emma?" I called out, my voice echoing in the void. The figure turned and I gasped. It was me, but older, weary, and marked by experiences that had yet to unfold. "You must listen," my future self said, her voice urgent. "This is not a dream. This is a warning. The powers you wield come at a cost, and the darkness is always waiting to claim its due." I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "What do you mean? What darkness?" "The entity you faced was only one of many," she explained. "There are countless others, each more dangerous than the last. They are drawn to power, to the disruption of the natural order, and they are always watching." I felt a chill run down my spine. "But we defeated it. I made the ultimate sacrifice." "Yes," she replied, her eyes filled with sorrow. "But the balance is fragile. The temptation to use your power will always be there, and the darkness will always be ready to exploit any weakness." "What should I do?" I asked, my voice trembling. "How can I protect my family and myself?" "Knowledge and vigilance," she said, echoing Alistair's words. "You must continue to learn about these forces, to understand their nature and how to combat them, and you must never forget the price of wielding such power." As the dream began to fade, she reached out and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Remember, Emma, you have the strength to face whatever comes, but you must be cautious. The darkness is patient, and it will wait for the moment you let your guard down." I woke with a start, my heart racing. The warning lingered in my mind, a stark reminder of the dangers that lay ahead. I knew I couldn't ignore it. I had to take action to ensure that my family and I were prepared for whatever might come. The first step was to share the dream with Alistair. I called him early the next morning, my voice still shaky from the vividness of the experience. "Alistair, I had a dream last night. It felt so real, and I think it's a warning." "Tell me everything," he said, his tone serious. I recounted the dream in detail, describing the encounter with my future self and the warning about the darkness. Alistair listened intently, his expression growing more concerned with each word. "This is significant," he said once I finished. "It's not just a dream. It's a message from the future, from yourself. We must take it seriously." "What should we do?" I asked, anxiety gnawing at me. "We need to increase our efforts to learn about these dark forces," Alistair replied. "And we must be vigilant. Your dream suggests that there are other entities out there, waiting for an opportunity to strike." Together, we devised a plan to delve deeper into the study of the supernatural. Alistair reached out to his network of scholars and experts, seeking their guidance and assistance. I focused on my training, honing my abilities and learning new ways to protect myself and my loved ones. Lily and our father were supportive, understanding the gravity of the situation. They joined us in our efforts, learning about protective rituals and how to recognize the signs of supernatural influence. One evening, as we gathered in the study, Lily voiced a concern that had been on my mind as well. "Alistair, how do we know when the darkness is near? Are there specific signs we should look for?" Alistair nodded. "There are always signs. Strange occurrences, changes in the environment, feelings of unease or dread. Entities often leave subtle clues before they fully manifest. We must learn to recognize these signs and act quickly." "Is there any way to prevent them from coming at all?" my father asked, his face lined with worry. "Prevention is difficult," Alistair admitted. "But we can take measures to protect ourselves and our home. Rituals, wards, and symbols of protection can create a barrier against these forces, and knowledge is our greatest weapon." As we worked together, a sense of unity and purpose grew among us. We were no longer just reacting to the supernatural. We were actively preparing to defend ourselves. It was empowering, but the underlying fear remained, a constant reminder of the dangers we faced. One night, as I sat alone in the study poring over ancient texts, I felt a familiar chill. The room seemed to darken, and the air grew heavy. I knew immediately that something was wrong. "Lily, Dad, Alistair," I called out, my voice urgent. They rushed into the room, their expressions filled with concern. "What's happening?" Lily asked, her eyes wide. "I think the darkness is here," I said, my voice trembling. "I can feel it." Alistair quickly began a protection ritual, chanting ancient words and lighting candles. Lily and my father joined in, their voices steady despite the fear that gripped them. As the ritual continued, the heaviness in the air began to lift, the darkness retreating. But I knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The warning from my dream echoed in my mind, a stark reminder of the vigilance required to keep the darkness at bay. Over the following months, we continued our preparations. Alistair taught us new protective rituals, and we strengthened the wards around our home. Lily and my father became adept at recognizing the signs of supernatural influence, their confidence growing with each passing day. One afternoon, as we practiced a particularly complex ritual, Lily paused and looked at me, her expression thoughtful. "Emma, do you ever wonder why you were given this power? Why you were chosen?" I nodded. "All the time. I still don't have all the answers, but I think it has something to do with our family's history. Our great-great-grandmother Eliza was a mystic, and I believe I inherited her abilities." "Do you think there's a reason beyond that?" she asked. "A purpose for why you have this power now?" "I've thought about that a lot," I admitted. "Maybe it's because we have the strength to face these challenges. Maybe it's our destiny to protect others from the darkness." Lily nodded, her expression resolute. "Then we'll face it together. We'll protect our family and anyone else who needs our help." Her words filled me with a renewed sense of purpose. We were not just victims of fate. We were warriors, fighting against the darkness to protect those we loved. As the years went by, we faced many challenges, but we always stood strong. The warning from my dream remained a guiding force, a reminder of the dangers that lurked just beyond our perception. We continued to learn, to grow, and to protect each other, always vigilant, always ready. One evening, as we sat around the fireplace, sharing stories and laughter, I felt a sense of peace. We had built a life of strength and unity, a testament to the love and sacrifice that had brought us here. Alistair raised a glass, his eyes filled with pride. To Emma, whose courage and sacrifice taught us the true meaning of love and resilience. And to all of us, who continue to honor her legacy by standing strong against the darkness. We raised our glasses, a sense of hope and determination filling the room. The darkness might always be watching, but we were ready. We had each other, and that was our greatest strength. As I looked around at my family and friends, I knew that we would face whatever came our way, united and unbreakable. The warning from beyond had given us the knowledge and the resolve to protect ourselves and those we loved. And in that knowledge we found the strength to keep going, to keep fighting, and to keep the darkness at bay.